Was she not coming?
Major fatigue, head chills, and low-grade fever.
Needs to stay home.
No, don't let her come. Don't let her come up here.
Do I need to call this to order?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to call this meeting for the budget to order at this time.
Date.
So take it away.
Well, good morning. Thank
Good
you
morning.
for coming. This day has been many, many months in the making here. So, we recently were handed off this budget packet. This is the draft version. Final version will likely change quite a bit, and that's what we're here today and over the next few days to work on. So my presentation is just going to give you a brief overview of what's in the materials.
And we use this to go
Yes.
with you?
Yeah, I just printed
Okay.
that off. It's the same thing I'm going to
Okay.
do, and then so this is just going to be a broad overview, and then we're going to just dig right in
Okay.
to the budget manual. Okay. So just a little recap of what the budget timeline looks like, or what it's been looking like this year. We started this a couple months ago with a council budget retreat. Then departmental budget requests were due to finance, and then council held a strategic planning session. That was something that was new this year and went well.
I think those dates are different. It was March the 9th and March 30th.
Okay. Then after that, the town manager, finance director, and HR director, we make up the budget team. We meet individually with each department head and discuss their budget requests and weed things out and flesh things out. And then next, the budget team, we develop the proposed budget. And that's where we are today, presenting the proposed draft budget to council. And then you will hold work sessions, and then tentatively the public hearing and adoption of this budget will be on June 1st. So just how can you use the budget manual? So in your budget manual, you've got comprehensive information that supplements everything. Within my presentation, at the bottom of each slide, you can see I've referred to different page numbers inside your budget manual. That way you can go to those pages and get more information. Okay, getting started. So what is the budget looking like in brief? The total proposed budget is $15.2 million. It's a $622,000 increase from the current year amended budget. That's a 4% increase. It's a dollar increase in total spending, which is net of transfers of $699,000. That's a 6% increase in total spending. The tax rate is 58 cents, no change. Looking at the budget compared to the...
Before you go any farther off this page, because this is something that, in my way of thinking, of course, we're looking at the proposed tax rate, 58 cents, but that is for the general fund, but yet the total proposed budget is everything.
Yes. Yes, so it's a total, this is the total budget.
Includes the
Total
enterprise funds, MSD, all funds.
All funds, total all funds. So once again, looking at total all funds budget. So looking at the original budget that was adopted last year, that number was $12.2 million. We had several budget amendments that brought us up to $14.5 million this year. And our current proposed or recommended budget for 21-22 is $15.2 million. So comparing our proposed budget to the original budget, that's a $2.9 million increase, or a 24% increase. And once again, comparing our proposed budget to the amended budget, that's a $622,000 or 4% increase. Talking about revenues first, and this is once again total all funds. Looking at how our revenues break down, fees make up the largest category of revenues, and that's largely in the water and sewer fund. We also get sanitation fees, stormwater fees. Next category is the ad valorem tax, the property tax. We also have interdepartmental transfers and unrestricted intergovernmental. Unrestricted intergovernmental includes your sales tax and PAL funds, allocations from other governments. Some of the major revenues in the general fund, how those changed this year. Our fund balance appropriation proposed for fiscal year 122 is $661,000. That's an increase of $244,000. Property tax, $2.3 million. That's an increase of $165,000. Sales and use tax, $1.325 million. That is also an increase of $95,000. Motor vehicle taxes, $305,000, which is an increase of $65,000. Use of capital reserves, so those are monies that we're transferring from our capital reserve fund into the general fund. It's $270,500, which is a decrease of $158,000. Transfer from PAL funds. So we've shifted the way we're using PAL funds this year. PAL funds are now in a separate fund. We're just using the PAL funds to service debt, which we'll talk about a little bit later as we get into this. Transfer of PAL funds for debt service, $23,900. Debt proceeds, $400,000, which is an increase of $20,000 from the previous year. And the enterprise fund reimbursement, which is the water and sewer fund, reimburses the general fund for services that the general fund provides to the water and sewer fund, is $131,000, which is a decrease of $88,000.
Sam, I have a question about the fund balance appropriated. According to this, I was looking at all the things that we're going to be taking from fund balance.
Well, so when I say fund balance there, I mean cash. I mean cash. We're paying cash.
I just wondered if you just should say general fund. And so when I think
General
of fund
fund dollars.
balance, I think of that 4.7 that we have. And according to the way it's listed here, it would be close to $1 million, all that you...
Yes, so it's, well, I mean, I guess it technically is fund balance, but it's just general fund cash. We're spending cash. We're paying for that with cash,
What about savings account?
basically. Yes.
basically.
So the
Money we're taking
But
out of
also your
savings.
revenues.
Yes.
I mean, for instance, the COLA, these things that are operational costs, they're coming from the revenues of the general fund.
correct. So it's general fund dollars.
So I think it needs to be specified general fund instead of fund balance.
Okay, yes.
To me, that was very misleading, because when you start taking salaries from fund balance, we don't do that.
So I can change
There's
the wording to
ongoing
that.
revenues.
Yeah, it just needs to be called
General
general fund.
General fund. General fund. Looking at tax dollars, digging a little bit deeper, we assumed a 3% increase in property tax valuation. That's based on early estimates that we received from Nash County. Compared to last year at this time, it's a 3% increase. So that's good news. You can see that the total tax levy is $2.3 million, a little bit $2.35 million, and at the 98% collection rate, we're estimating $2.304 million in tax revenue.
We're keeping tax collections in-house.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So when you take a look at all of our general fund departments, some of our departments generate revenue, such as fees. For example, the sanitation department collects fees. When you take out the fees that are allocated to each department, what's left over is general fund dollars that are subsidizing those departments. So this graph shows you how our tax dollars are being spent, net of all of the fees that the departments are collecting. And you can see the police makes up the largest category at 30%, and fire and streets make up the second largest two categories. Taking a look at sales tax projections, this time last year we were faced with a lot of uncertainty as far as what our sales tax were going to look like. The league was projecting very detrimental decreases. Pleased to say that did not happen. In fact, we've had an increase in sales tax revenue from last year. And so we're just going to continue on with that. So what I've shown you here, the first column is what the league is saying are going to be the projections. Now, we have to take this with a grain of salt, because we did not follow the pattern that the league stated as of last year, and we really haven't. we actually aren't being as detrimentally affected by COVID. So they're actually saying we're going to have some increases. We may not, our increases and decreases may not follow their projections. But so that's their projections. And then this is our anticipated revenue for next fiscal year. And you can compare that to the anticipated revenue as of the current year. So the last column you can see, that's what our estimated revenues are going to be this year. So you can see how they compare.
Sam, what I took from what the league said was that there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
And that they, some their figures are not in stone. That, in other words, we still need to be cautious.
Yes. So we're using 1.332 for sales and use tax. Video programming, some of our franchise taxes are set to decrease, are estimated to decrease year by year, and that's just the way those fees are. They're based on phone, their landline and cable phone tax. Fewer people are using that, so you can expect that tax to decrease year by year. Switching gears, looking at the water and sewer fund and the major revenues in the water and sewer fund. Okay, so for the proposed budget, we're appropriating $0 in fund balance. In fact, we're going to add to our savings next year. So that's a decrease of $1.6 million. Use of capital reserves, we're only going to use $40,000 of the enterprise fund capital reserves. So that's a decrease of $137,000. Water revenues, sewer revenues. Yes.
What are we going to use the 40,000 for?
It's for
me off
vehicle.
track.
One vehicle.
For one vehicle, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Truck.
A
Yes.
truck, okay, all right.
So the water and sewer revenues, with proposed fee increases, we can expect that those revenues will increase. Sewer surcharge revenues are estimated to increase to $75,000. We've got a couple of larger corporate commercial players that we're going to begin to assess sewer surcharges on, so we can expect that those charges will come in. Late charges. That should actually say 90,000. I apologize. I didn't catch that.
What,
You
the
see where it says-
30,000?
30,000 should be 90,000?
You see where it says late charges 0?
Uh-huh.
That should be, I believe that should say 90,000. I apologize.
Rather than 0.
Yes.
Sewer surcharge revenue, 75,000
Yes.
increase based on what?
We have done a lot of work digging into our surcharges, and we've discovered there are a couple of commercial users, one in particular, we have not been assessing surcharges on,
Okay, all
and
right.
so we're going to begin to do that.
Okay, all right.
As of right now, Sam, what is our fund balance in enterprise fund?
So I've got another slide coming
Okay.
in. I think it's going to be closer to 1.3 and not 1.6.
Okay.
You mean what we have right now?
Oh, you mean like the total left fund balance
Yeah.
available? It's going to be about $300,000. I've got a slide that's got
Okay.
that action. There will be proposed fee increases in the, for the fiscal year. Sanitation and recycling, we're proposing to increase that to $20.50. One reason is that the recycling contract has increased. Another, and that's to cover costs associated with the sanitation.
So that total increase is how much?
Almost $2.
Almost $2.
Yeah, it also increased last year, right?
It did.
It did.
It did by $4. It hadn't been increased in a while.
So are we expecting an increase every year?
I would expect that if that recycling contract does increase just about every single year. So probably so.
It did not for a long time, but now
Yeah.
it's... yeah.
Well, actually, Louise, it did. We just didn't pass it
Yeah.
on.
So recycling's what's driving this increase here?
Basically, and also to cover the cost of the sanitation department.
Okay.
Recreation, we're proposing to provide programs at cost for in-town residents, and there would be an in-cost plus an additional fee for out-of-town residents. Water and sewer, base fee and rate increases. looking a little bit deeper at the water and sewer base fee and rate increases and how we arrived at the numbers. We looked at our proposed budgets, and we saw that the total budget was $4.6 million. We looked at our revenues at the current rates, and that was $3.5 million. We see we have a deficit in administrative revenues of $333,000, a deficit of water revenues in the amount of $16,000, and a deficit in sewer revenues in the amount of $681,000.
So we're having to make up that difference.
Based on our current customer profile, the types and the number of customers that we currently have, and the estimated usage of those customers.
Are these rate increases on the backs of residential users because of the commercial problems we've had?
It's surcharges and sewer. It's increased costs in sewer. I mean, we dig very deep into that. In here, we've got several issues, infrastructure issues, I&I in the system, stormwater getting into our system.
But the surcharges have been coming from commercial entities, right? I mean, that's been the larger part of the problem.
The surcharges, yes, but the surcharges are based on the volume of sewer that we're being assessed, and that is largely a stormwater in the sewer system issue.
So how do we fix that?
Well, we televise and we see where the water is the groundwater is coming in.
So that's what, in this part, when you were talking about, they're the things you're going to use to try to correct it.
Yeah, the plan.
In the revenues for water and sewer, did you take into consideration anywhere in here in regards to the residential construction we got going on around town? And I understand the apartment thing behind Dollar General.
Hadley.
Yeah, but they're going to start moving in there pretty soon.
We did. In this packet, you see a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
We projected a 3% increase in just based on growth. So that is built in. So based on our current customer profile and our current usage, and that does take into account CFE closure and things of that nature. Our minimum water and sewer rate, our water and sewer base fees should increase by $5.05. The minimum water increase should be 12 cents per 1,000 gallons. The minimum sewer rate increase should be $6 per 1,000 gallons. This does not take into account depreciation. One of the League of Municipalities' best practices is that you factor in depreciation as an expense. We took it out this year so we could keep these costs and these rate increases to a minimum. It's not best practice. And you can see that as you go, once you start adding those costs back in, these fees no longer are able to sustain that. So
How long has it been since we've actually had a real increase in a substantial increase in the water and sewer?
We had some
We had a
last
slight
year.
increase
I
last
know
year.
we did,
Very
but I
slight.
said substantial.
We've never had a substantial increase.
Right, and you don't want a substantial.
We always do a little bit, a little bit, a little bit.
But the water sewer fund is user-based.
Right.
The user
Right.
fees are what pays for those services.
And it's
So
not
we've
doing
got
that, right?
to make sure that we are covering what the costs are going
Right.
to be. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have these years, and this increase that we're looking at is going to only grow over
Right.
time. In fact, I feel like part of the reason we're facing these large increases now, it's due to some of the factors we've got going on. But it's also because for several years, the town has not done anything to help push that water sewer fund so that the user charges are covering the costs involved.
it's a twofold problem. We've got the revenue side, which these fees address that. We've got some cost issues, in which we're working very hard to address those issues as well.
Now, are you going to go over those, Sam,
Yes.
the explanation?
Yeah, we should definitely
Okay.
discuss that
Yeah.
in much detail.
So this basically is $11.17 increase. Just for this.
Yes.
Okay.
What's your waste?
It's more than that. It's $5 in both water and sewer.
$5 and $6. I'm just looking at these right
It's a
here.
$5 water base fee, a $5 sewer base fee. So that's $10.10.
Ooh, so that should have been $10 instead of $5.05.
Yep, because the water base fee will increase and the sewer base fee will increase. They will each increase by $5.
Okay, I thought there was.
And then your sanitation increase of about $2.
So
So that's
looking at these proposed rate increases, which are in the proposed fee schedule provided to you, your expected revenue surplus is $125,000. So that's a very slim margin, even at these rate increases. So that doesn't really give you much of a contingency in case anything goes wrong. It doesn't give you enough to provide for the depreciation in the fund. So that just needs to be kept in mind. Total all funds proposed expenditure by major function. Water and sewer is the largest category, followed by public safety. Proposed expenditure by category. Operating costs make up the largest majority of our spending, followed by personnel. Looking at our proposed budget by fund, general fund, $7.39 million. The MSD fund is $123,000. That's a large increase from last year. We've got some major projects that we're proposing this year. The stormwater fund is $155,000. PAL fund, $138,000. General fund capital reserves, $290,500. Now, I did say that the capital reserves that the general fund would be using is $270,000. That is because $20,000 is going to be going to the stormwater fund. So that's why that number is $290,000. Total enterprise fund capital reserves, $40,000. That's for that truck. We're going to be using some of our American Recovery Act money. We're going to use $1.08 million of that. Police Special Revenue Fund, that's a new fund this year. That takes into account federal and state asset forfeiture dollars that are allocated to the police for drug enforcement and policing. Water and Sewer Fund is $4.79. Water and Sewer Capital Project Fund is $1.079. And the Fire Station 2 Fund is $100,000. Looking at the budget comparison.
This capital fund, $40,000 for that truck.
Yes.
That's because we already approved the 40 in this year's budget. So is this to be added to it to make a total of 80 going to
that's for a
it?
different truck.
It's for a different truck?
Yeah, this is for a truck for sewer.
Okay.
That
all right.
40,000 you're thinking of is that high water vehicle?
Right,
Yes, yeah. So that actually, the second one was actually cut.
The second one was actually cut?
Correct.
So they won't get the 40,000?
Correct.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
So this graph is just a more detailed explanation on comparing our budgets by fund to our original and amended budgets. As you see, the general fund is $227,000 increase over the original budget, but it's a $6,800 increase over the amended budget. The MSD budget is $84,000 increase over the original and amended budgets. Water and Sewer Fund is a $441,000 increase over the original budget, but a $669,000 decrease compared to the amended budget. Police Special Revenue is just a $10,000 increase. It's a new fund. Stormwater Fund, it's $155,000. It's an increase because it's a new fund this year, the Stormwater and PAL funds, as well as the Coronavirus Special Relief. Those are new funds as well. Water and Sewer Capital Project Fund, that's a new fund. Capital Reserve General Fund, it's a $25,000 decrease from the original budget, $169,000 decrease as compared to the amended budget. Okay, so what does the budget include? So just on this slide, I provided a pretty comprehensive list. It's in the budget packet, but this slide just shows the major items. These are the major funded requests. Number one, we've got a public safety salary study. That includes police and fire. That's $209,000. Street and sidewalk improvements, we're proposing $400,000. Minimum housing abatement, we're proposing $45,000. Recreation programming, that includes a program supervisor, an additional position. We're basically putting recreation back online. It's $142,000.
What else is included in that? Okay, salary for an assistant.
Correct. One additional position and just the supplies and program costs, cost of program.
Is that a full-time position or part?
Yes.
What
And
kind
some
of-
equipment at parks too, isn't it, Sam? Some proposed equipment at Glover Park.
23,000
So
for
the
the
zip
zip line.
There is a zip line, but that is actually in the public buildings budget.
Okay.
Is that part of the 20,000 that we give them every year?
It is not. The 20,000 just remains as a contingency.
So this is in addition to.
The 23,000 is in addition to that. We are proposing to do the recreation master plan for 42,000. That's going to give us access to Part F grants. Police replacement vehicles. We're proposing to replace 3 of those at a cost of $165,000. Farmers market operating budget, $61,000. The Nashville
Have
Junction.
we nailed that down yet, of whether we're doing the one?
No.
So I mean, that figure is not in stone.
No,
Correct.
It's proposed.
just proposed.
Proposed figure. National Junction, which is the parking lot and common area, $275,000. And water and sewer infrastructure improvements, $1.079 million. So all of those requests total $2.4 million. We also did make several cuts, things that we did not propose in this budget. 5 new positions in the police department, 3 positions in the fire department, 5 additional vehicles for the police department, in addition to the vehicles that were funded that would go with the positions, basically.
We did 3 vehicles, right?
3 vehicles.
And that's what we've done every year.
Right.
So where's this 5 coming from?
The additional vehicles that would have been required if,
They've gotten the new officers.
If you'd have
Yeah.
got 2 more sergeants, 2 more patrol officers and investigators, they would need a vehicle. Okay.
library full-time assistant, we did fund a part-time position, but the request was for a full-time position. Cottonwood and Cypress Lift Station abandonment, $1.9 million. Town rebranding and logo update, $12,000. And that second high water vehicle, $40,000. That did not make the cut.
Okay.
Community contributions. So we do contribute to entities in town. So these are the ones that we are contributing to, basically giving level funding this year. There is going to be an addition, and that's to the Boy Scouts. They are proposing to do a community service project for the town in partnership with the recreation department. So they're going to be adding a picnic shelter. So what we'll do is we're going to install a concrete pad, and then we're going to split the cost of the picnic shelter with them, and they will get that installed as their community service project.
At the park?
At Glover
Yes.
Park, by the playground equipment, there will be a shade structure.
Okay. All right.
So this slide shows how the water and sewer fund's reimbursement to the general fund is calculated. So we take the portion of salaries. Basically, the enterprise fund is 40% of the total budget. General fund is 60%. So 40% of the administration salaries, which include HR director, finance director, town manager, 40% of those salaries, that's what the enterprise fund owes to the general fund. However, water and sewer administration, which includes a couple of my employees, a portion of their salaries should be allocated to the general fund. So we net that out. Because the two actually kind of work for each other. So the total enterprise fund reimbursement to the general fund is $109,000. So this is what we're proposing as far as a capital reserve activity. I should probably provide you a breakdown of what's included in that. I believe in the packet of the major funded items, you can see the items there that are proposed. But as of 2021, your beginning balance is $674,000. We're going to add $125,000. We're going to use $290,000, and so that's going to leave us with a projected balance as of 2022 in the amount of $509,000. Looking at the water and sewer fund, our beginning balance will be $435,000. As I had mentioned, our rates our proposed rates, even with the increases, don't give us enough money to add to this fund. So at this time, the addition to capital reserves is zero. We're going to use $40,000, and that gives us a projected balance of $395,000. Looking at fund balance and our current year budget updates. So our original fund balance appropriation for the general fund was $73,000. We had several budget amendments. We had the Windy Oak Drive Drainage Improvement Project, $289,000, which I was just made aware of this morning. That project will likely not be completed this year. So that money will not be used. We'll have to reappropriate that next year. We've got Budget Amendment 9 for the high water response vehicle for $40,000. We have Budget Amendments 1 and 2, and I think maybe also Budget Amendment 3. We had a couple of library grants that required some small matches. And we had coronavirus relief funds that we received. We just reallocated those.
Did we get a breakout of how that was used, the $88,000?
Yeah, I can provide that.
Okay.
It was used for the plexiglass there and at Town Hall, PPE.
I just think we need an itemized,
I've got that readily available. So, however, our revenues came in higher than expected, and our expenditures came in lower than expected. So, I'm estimating that we're actually going to add to our savings this year rather than use savings. I'm estimating we're going to add about $100,000 to our savings. So, that's going to leave us with an ending available fund balance of $5 million. However, next year, to balance the budget, we're going to need to appropriate $661,000. Taking a look at the history of how our fund balance, how our unassigned fund balances versus our expenditures are, we have a pretty healthy fund balance as a percentage of our expenditures. They're well above 50%. And here's just another look. The total general fund balance, that's all fund balance, not just available. Once again, we're pretty steadily increasing, some decreases there. This year and the next proposed year, we're going to have some decreases.
if some of these things come to pass.
That's right. Current year budget update for the water and sewer fund. Our original net asset appropriation was $19,000, but we had to amend that and add $1.6 million to that. However, I believe we're going to end up using about $1.3 million, which is going to leave us with an unrestricted net position of $335,000. So next year, we're proposing some fee increases. We're going to implement a plan to get control of some of our costs. So with the fee increases, we're going to contribute to our retained earnings. That means we're going to add to our savings in the amount of $187,000. We had one major budget amendment, and that was the sewer surcharges, sewer charges and sewer surcharges, plus the CD closure.
This is an example of why a strong fund balance is so important. Because
Especially in the water and sewer fund.
Well, both funds, because we see how quickly it can be wiped out, you know, when you have a perfect storm, which we obviously had a perfect storm.
Taking a look here, I just wanted to show this slide. You can see that the dollar change in unrestricted net assets, pretty much every year since 2014, there's been a decrease in the unrestricted net assets. There was one year that the assets did increase, that was 2017. However, I do like to point out that the Water and Sewer Fund owed some money to a capital project fund in that year. So that number's likely overstated.
Did they forget to pay it or didn't pay it?
They paid the bill.
Okay.
The cash just was owed. They didn't move the cash. It's kind of hard to explain.
Do you know what project that was?
It was two different projects. I'd have to go back and look. It was two budget amendments that were done last year.
Was it the sewer outfall line?
It was, well, number 8 was one of them.
Well 8 was,
Or was that the year before already?
it wasn't well 8. Well 8, we actually had money left over in that fund.
Okay.
It was two projects, sewer-related projects.
It would be good to know which ones they were,
Okay.
just for...
Yeah, I think I may have put that in there. And this just also shows you the total on net position, not just the available net position, but the total position. You can see that it's pretty much been in a decline state since 2013, 2014. Finishing up, looking at our debt, the balances of our debt projected as of June 30th of next fiscal year. Our total general fund debt balance will be $705,000. We'll have two loans. One will be for the garbage truck, and the other loan will be for streets and sidewalks. In the water and sewer fund, the total debt will be $64,000. Now that's contingent, because right now we're proposing an asset and inventory assessment, and we may find some major issues. We may, need to immediately address those issues, and that might require us to issue some debt. So that's the number as it stands now, but that could change.
When is this sewer jet back truck paid off?
At 3 years.
We still
I
got
think it's
three?
23, 24.
We're close.
Okay.
And then the stormwater fund, $267,000. That would be for the Windy Oak drainage project.
The
Well,
streets and, excuse me, the streets and sidewalks, we've never taken debt for streets and sidewalks before.
Correct.
Okay, this is something that needs to be talked about, I think.
Yes, we should definitely
You
discuss
plan
that.
on
in
using
detail.
PAL funds to service that debt, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
What was
But
the interest rate for those loans that we had for the garbage truck and the,
The garbage truck was 1.6.
that's what I was thinking. And what about for streets and sidewalks?
I used 3.5 for the budget. That's pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably likely come in much lower, which is good. But so
And this-
I just would like to leave a little bit, for uncertainty.
And the sewer back was very low also, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was close to 1.8.
1.8, I think it was.
1.8. So that's all for my presentation. Like I said, that was just a broad overview, just to get us into it. Now we can just kind of dig into the budget manual here. I'm just going to pull up my notes here.
We waiting on Rand on this?
I'm pulling up my notes. I've got a huge spreadsheet here. So, okay. Okay, so. Well, Brandon, did you want to go over your budget message a little bit? Give kind of a brief overview of.
Sure. So, as Sam had mentioned, I think one of the exciting components of this particular budget was the strategic planning session the council participated in. And we came out with some fundamental core values that you have for the community. We came out with a vision, an actual mission statement, and then a number of goals. And then from the budget retreat there were several priorities that the council came up with. And for the most part, this budget has something in that addresses every one of those. And if you flip to page 3, Sam's got them summarized pretty nicely there. With Park and Recreation, you guys wanted to include a farmer's market. You wanted to include Parks and Rec in the master plan. There was talk, a desire of walking trails and bike paths. This budget doesn't have anything for that. The organizational excellence, we believe this budget continues with that. The revenue and taxes are in balance, meaning there's no proposed tax increase with this budget. The welcoming and safe and growing community. One of the initiatives or goals in this project is we're putting money in to work on abating some abandoned and derelict buildings around town. It's only $45,000. We'll see how far it goes. Some of those buildings in and of themselves, if we find asbestos in it, they could be all of that just for one building. Economic development. It didn't put anything in here to come up with an economic development plan per se, but that doesn't mean that we cannot work with our economic development partners of Nash County Economic Development and the Carolina Gateway Partnership and come up with a specific economic development project plan for Nashville. We got 3 projects in the municipal service district, occupying downtown buildings. Again, part of that $45,000 is some money to begin seeing if we can get 3 buildings in particular in the downtown that are in bad shape, something done with. Support the residential industrial development. It does that. It fosters a positive relationship with the county, we believe. Safe reliability and sustainable infrastructure, drainage and stormwater retention it addresses. We got our map for water and sewer and a multi-year implementation plan for trying to button up, especially in our sanitary sewer, the infiltration that we have, and we have a plan in here for streets and sidewalks. So, Sam, is your thing pulled up yet, or is it still?
Oh, I mean, we're just going through here.
Okay.
I just have my notes.
Okay. So continuing on page 4, then, the budget in the brief, as Sam had mentioned, the proposed budget is $15,205,000. It's an increase in spending over the amended budget by $699,000. Each fiscal year, as you know, the budget begins July 1st and ends June 30th, and the budget is adopted in accordance with North Carolina Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act, and the town follows the Government Finance Officers Association criteria for distinguished budget presentation. That's what we're shooting for this year. Those are the 5 goals that the council came up with. You can see them there. And then the major revenue sources, Sam has already gone over some of these in her PowerPoint, but property taxes at $2.6 million, fees at $5.7 million, other government revenues at $2.3 million, fund balance and savings $1 million, and other sources $2.6 million. So the property tax rate is still proposed at the same at $5.58 per hundred, and the median household or home value in Nashville is right at $137,000.
The graphic in the middle is not readable. I mean, it's so.
So yeah, what it says: public safety at 42%, administration at 14%, transportation at 13%, cultural and leisure at
10.
Yes. I see Larry's got his. So we got economic development in there, and then public works, and then the long-term debts Sam has listed there. So total budget by major function, all revenues. You can see economic development, environmental protection, government, general government and administration, and then water and sewer. And the biggest one.
Yeah, water and sewage taking us out.
So Sam, you want to continue on page 5?
So page 5 starts the budget summary. Proposed budget by fund there. You can see the numbers there. It's a 4% increase over the total budget, but like I said, it's a 6% increase in spending when you take out transfers. You move to page 7. You can see the dollar changes and the percent changes in the major functions. Water and sewer, it makes up 43% of the total budget. It's a 22% change. It's a dollar increase of 1.16 million. Public safety, it's an $8,000 increase. That's really actually no change. General government.
$8,000 is an increase, but it's no change?
It's basically, it's pretty much
Percentage-wise,
it's pretty much 0%. It's basically very little change. There were some salary increases due to the public safety salary study, but there was a decrease because the fire department's not purchasing those vehicles this year. So it nets out to pretty much zero change.
Okay.
You can see general government and administration, there were several cuts that were made in that, so it's a 12% decrease, or percent change over last year. Environmental protection, which includes sanitation, it's a 52% decrease, and that's largely because of the garbage truck. Well, we purchased 2 garbage trucks this year, so. Culture and leisure is a 21% increase. That's adding programming back to recreation. And economic development is a 25% increase, and that includes the farmers market in Nashville Junction.
So
Yes, ma'am.
the proposed for leisure, cultural resource, 775,000.
Yes.
That includes the farmer's market and all that,
It
or what?
includes library and recreation.
Okay. They're combined.
Yes,
Usually
library
we
and
separate
recreation
those
are
out.
there. And actually, the farmer's market is included in economic and physical development. Doing the same thing, just looking at the categories. You can see operating budget's actually 11% decrease. Personnel is an 11% increase. Spending on capital, that's largely resulted from the water and sewer fund. That's a 54% increase. Also, the Nashville Junction is included in that number. Transfers, as far as monies that are moving between the funds, it's a 4% decrease. Debt service is a 63% increase. It's a large increase, but it's an increase of $68,000. It's the stormwater, $40,000, stormwater reimbursement to the general fund, and also streets and sidewalk.
Give an example of transfers.
For example, when the general fund is setting aside money in the capital reserve fund of $125,000.
Okay.
It actually adds $250,000 to the budget, because you got to add the $125 to the general fund as the expense, and you got to add $125,000 to the reserve fund as a revenue. Looking at page 8, you can see how the departments themselves are increasing or decreasing. I don't have anything up there right now, Sarah. So.
Oh, it's the recorder.
Oh,
On my laptop, yeah.
So the one column proposed is mislabeled. It should be FY 21-22, right on top of the word proposed in the blue.
that middle column there. I've actually got updated copies, which I can pass out a little bit later. It's got that correction. But you can see the administration, which includes town manager, it's a 1% decrease. Governing body, which is the council, that budget decreased by 8%. HR was no increase. It was actually a $75 decrease, but 0%. Finance and tax was a 15% decrease. Planning and zoning was a 3% decrease. So as you see, our town hall budgets are decreasing. There were some significant cuts. Buildings and grounds is a 15% increase. That's largely as a result. We've done some reallocation of positions. We've got two employees in the cemetery at this time. We're proposing to move one of them to public buildings budget. It's just a lateral transfer. And so that person will be kind of responsible for maintaining the buildings and overseeing maintenance of the public buildings. So that's the reason for that increase. Fleet has decreased by 3%. Police budget increased by 5%. Fire was a slight dollar decrease, but it's a 0% change, really. Streets is a 163% increase. We're beefing up the amount of improvements that we're doing to streets and sidewalks, so we're going to dig into that a little bit here shortly. Health funds is a 31% decrease. That's because we're changing the way we're using those monies. Sanitation is a 39% decrease. That's as a result of the garbage trucks, one-time purchase. Stormwater is a 64% decrease. That's due to that Windy Oak drainage project. But actually that number is likely to change because that drainage project will not be completed this year. So that's going to have to be added back next year. Recreation is a 120% increase. Farmers Market's a new budget. Library is a 7% decrease. Cemetery is a 39% decrease, but as I had just recently mentioned, that one position from the cemetery is now being moved to public buildings. So that's why this budget's decreasing and public buildings is increasing.
But you're not removing from the cemetery crew.
No, no.
You just as pay. Just as
Correct.
pay.
That's right.
Okay.
Debt service, 47% increase. MSD is a 217% increase. We've got 3 major projects that we're proposing this year. Capital Reserve, General Fund, 37% decrease. Enterprise Fund Capital Reserves is a 90% decrease. Water and Sewer Administration is a 12% increase. Water Operations is a 6% decrease. Sewer Operations is a 13% decrease. Non-departmental Water and Sewer is a 44% increase. Transfers and pass-throughs is a 100% decrease. Water and sewer. We're not going to be moving any money into capital reserves this year. Debt service is a 1% increase. Coronavirus Relief Fund is a huge increase, and that's as a result of those American Care Act funds that we're going to be receiving. The Police Special Revenue, it's a new fund, and the Water and Sewer Capital Project Fund, that's going to be a new fund this year. And Fire Station 2 is level funding. So looking at page 10, I did provide a very comprehensive list of all of the items that were, all the major requests that were funded. We can go through those. There is a 2% COLA that was proposed. When I say funding source, fund balance, we can just assume that means general fund dollars. VC3, our contract, there's a 3% annual increase in that contract, so that's the reason for that increase. Health insurance, retirement for law enforcement and general employees, those have all increased. Those increase year by year. Carolina's Gateway Partnership, their annual dues increased by $5,000.
Do we have to pay that? I don't think we should.
That's up for council discussion.
I say keep it as it is. We haven't had that
Because
much.
we're paying
$20,000 right now.
$20,000 now.
Right.
And they asked for 25.
They asked for 25.
Yes. $5,000 increase.
We've had one business on Cook Road with how many years that have gone by, and there have been any number proposed, and nothing has happened.
That's up for council
I think
discussion.
20,000 is sufficient.
Okay. Cook Road vacant frontage. Randy, if you want to explain that. Did you want to explain that? Cook Road vacant frontage.
That was a property that Balance bought.
Yeah, Lee Balance bought the Jones property out there, the house, and then there was a little over an acre of vacant land. He bought it all, and he's made a request at the time he purchased that, see if the town would buy the vacant lot from him for what he paid for it, which was $30,000. So again, this is up to the council. We programmed it into this proposed budget. At the time when Lee made the request, you said you would look at it at budget time and see if you could afford to do it. So that's up to you guys. Excuse me.
What do we propose to do with that?
We had added to
Property.
the 18 acres behind it. And
Where
we had-
Maharon was going to locate, that never happened.
Correct. And that 18 acres is the largest usable tract of that whole farm that the town bought back in 2015.
Why don't we hold off on it until we get a prospect for that property back there? And if they want additional property, then we will buy it to include with it if we get a prospect for it. But to buy it just to let it sit there and nobody own it, I mean, we can't get in the land purchasing business. We'll get broke quick.
Costs may go up at that point, though.
Well, it may go up, but I mean, it's costing us for it to just sit there and do nothing. That's just my opinion.
May I ask a question? I could not find this. How much did the town pay for that Cook property originally?
I think it's about $245,000.
The swamp.
It's not all swamp.
Not all small.
Majority of it is.
I don't think the majority of it is swamp.
Yeah, it is. I took somebody out there to check it. It is. So it was about $200,000 for that acreage.
240. I think.
245.
Yeah. And we got like just shy of 600,000, I believe, in grants to run the water and sewer out there.
Uh-huh.
So we're leaving the number?
So what we're gonna do with it? Are we scratching Gateway for right now? The 5,000?
I think what we need to do is go through the entire thing and see everything, put question marks by what we want to discuss, and then come
And then
back
go
and
back to
discuss it. Yeah.
These are all question marks.
Right.
All right.
Stump grinding, $40,000. We received revenue from the clearing of the timber this year. $45,000 for minimum housing. We propose to include this figure annually for minimum housing abatement. In public buildings, we're going to update the library's gutters and sump pump for $10,000. Public Works roofing repairs, we had an assessment done on all of our roofs, so per that assessment, that's work that needs to be done. Police and fire, they've got 3 HVAC units that need to be replaced. We're proposing to replace one each year for the next 3 years. And police and fire roofing repairs in the amount of $10,000, once again per that assessment.
Did the Public Works roofing get damaged with all this hail where everybody's getting new roofs for?
I think there is some hail damage up there.
Well, then we
think
need
there
to
is
get
some.
our insurance on that.
Well, I don't know if it's as a result. I mean, that was mostly on that side of town. I haven't heard much about any hail damage on the west side. Have you guys?
No,
No, but just the fact that we had hail, we probably need to get the insurance people to look at it.
We'll get somebody back up
It's
there.
been a while. I
Do
mean,
it
it was
see.
a long ago. There are pictures in the assessment. You can probably take a look, Randy,
Yeah.
and see if it was hail damage or not.
The stump grinding, okay, the timber that was removed, or has it been removed? Hasn't been removed. That was going to be about $42,000, right?
We actually have already received the revenue for it,
How much?
$42,000.
$42,000.
So
Okay, so the
Well, I
stump
don't-
grinding is going to cost $40, so that's a
Well,
wash.
it's a projection based upon what Al Colley had told us. Now, once the timber's off, we're going to let it we put specifications together and get bids on that.
and we can't do that till the timber's off. Have you heard anything else from them, Mr. When they gonna get in there?
Yeah, in 30 days. Same story I've been hearing since October.
Oh, that's the same 30 days you heard back
It's a broken
when?
record. So I'm contemplating having Mark Edwards send him a letter.
Who's the contractor?
East Carolina Timber
Out of where?
they're from down around Greenboro or Greenberg area.
Greenberg.
Greenville?
Greenville.
Greenville?
sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Looking at the COLA, last year we held off on it until we saw our revenue prospects, and we reinstituted, right, the COLA.
So this is actually a 2% COLA only for non-public safety employees. So we've already vastly scaled it back.
Okay, where we at now?
Back up at the top.
One of the issues that we're facing,
Oh, she went back up here. Okay.
if you look at this huge increase in public safety salaries, I mean, this is a result, basically, of our salaries not keeping in line with COLA. We really should just get more consistent with COLAs and making sure that our salaries are in line with market. We don't want to fall behind. Next year, there will be the salary study for the non-public safety. In our 5-year plan, those figures are kind of estimated already in there. And of course, there would be a COLA for the public safety, but not a COLA for non-public safety. And then the year after that, if we just maintain the COLA year by year, then these market salary studies, and when we get those done, it's not these huge increases. You're just a slight increase.
I think we need to try to be consistent with that.
I
We're
agree.
losing people already. We're gonna
And then you
continue
have to
lose
pay to
people.
retrain them,
And
new
we're
people.
competing with some big dogs. So we're going to get behind, even further behind if we don't do something.
So in the municipal service district, we've got some funds accumulated there. We've been collecting those taxes since 2017, I believe. We haven't really done any major projects, so we've got a good amount of funds available there. So we're proposing some projects in the MSD area. We've got facade improvement mini grants, $7,500. I think it's 3 grants for $2,500 apiece. Vacant building upfit forgivable loans. It's two $10,000 loans. Of course, the recipient of the loan, they would have to follow certain criteria in order for the loan to be forgiven. So that's how that would work. We're proposing to bury the telecommunication lines and install decorative lighting along Barn Street. We're estimating that cost to be about $70,000.
That'll probably get us started.
I was going to say, that's a low figure for burying people.
I got I emailed correspondence with the CenturyLink engineer yesterday, and I had back in March, and I hadn't heard anything back from her, so I followed back up, and she's working on it. Suddenlink told us along Barn Street it would be right at $10,000 to put theirs on the ground, and I don't have any confidence in that
No,
number either. I mean, they have the same stretch all the way from Railroad to Church Street, and we'll have to see what comes back on that.
What's the MSD's total fund balance?
I've got it in here. I think it's
Was it 145, I think?
How much?
Wasn't it 145?
Yeah.
145,000?
And it brings in about $40,000 a year.
Okay.
Yesterday I did get something from Duke Energy. They have a program available to nonprofit 501c3s like Chambers of Commerce, up to $25,000 that Chambers can apply for and use it to give assistance to businesses in their area that have struggled with COVID. It can be used for rent, mortgage payments, supplies, labor. They just have to submit the application. They're only doing 10 of them for $250,000. But
The chamber has to do it.
yeah, it says right in the literature that governmental entities are not eligible applicants for this. So I passed it on to our chamber yesterday. I think the deadline is May 18th, or the end of the month, so it's coming right up.
And last, I'm proposing to purchase some equipment. It's a one-time purchase, and install that in the MSD area to enforce the 2-hour parking. In the police budget, we've got the salary increase and 3 vehicles. We actually appropriated $150 last year for 3 vehicles. There's a slight increase this year. We are proposing to install in-car dash cameras in those vehicles. And 6 mobile radios. So that figure, that $30,000, is probably going to be something that you would see year by year, just to replace equipment. Those radios need to be replaced pretty much annually.
It costs almost as much as a lift station pump. One radio.
Yep.
And the technology kind of changes every 5 years or so. So
Of course.
market in the fire department, it's a salary study increase, and then we've got the fire station 2 land and engineering. That is highlighted in yellow because we may actually receive a grant for that entire project. And if that's the case, that's
That
gonna
would be a great blessing.
That would be for the building, but not the land.
Right.
Did you guys want to look at land right now?
Yeah, if you got it.
We don't have anything nailed down, do we?
Nope.
We don't, but let me see if I can wake my computer up here quick and get into it. I'll just hook up the Sam's thing there. So the fire chief got with our engineer, Kevin Varnell, and they just scoured the east side of Nashville trying to find a potential site. And I'll grab my mouse here so I can move. Thank you.
Louise owns all that land beside Wendy's where they've got all that piping and stuff
So we looked at this property, which I mentioned in my manager's report last week. It's on North Clarendon.
now. Clarendon.
Clarity.
Clarendon. I'll get it right, yeah, Brenda. So looking at about 4 acres right along the railroad track. And I've reached out to a representative of that property, and I heard back yesterday that it's not available. So
That's the wooded area, right?
it is. So then
We need
also
to reach
looked at
out to the governor.
What's that?
Reach out to the
Oh,
governor.
no. It's his property.
We also looked at this property, if I can get my mouse to work, right here on Clarendon, and had Kevin look at that property, because that one had a for sale sign on it. A lot of it is
Where are you at? Yeah.
right here.
It's mighty
A
narrow.
lot of it is swampy ground, but that south end sits higher, but it's not deep enough.
That's what I was thinking.
It just isn't a deep enough property. So we ruled that one out. Another property we looked at is this DOT property that's right at Red Oak Road and Eastern Avenue. I reached out to Bobby Lieberman in the past on that, and it was a no. I don't think anything's changed on that. Where the median goes through for the east and westbound lanes, they put those pilings up. And they did that because people were making a left-hand turn onto Clarendon and getting T-boned by somebody coming the other way. Then
We got that a little bit closer.
another property we looked at is one of David Rose's properties. Oh, that's not it. And this is on Oak Level Road or East Washington Street. And right there. Now, we haven't talked to David about that. I need to see if he's interested in selling that particular piece.
That's the entrance to Woodfield, right across from the entrance to Woodfield.
It is. There's, it's already on a hard surface street. All these have water and sewer going right past them already.
There's
So,
road frontage.
yes.
I think this is probably the best out of all of them.
The property that David has offered to give the town, as you know, requires a road extension and a water and sewer extension.
Half mile.
And when everything's said and done there, you're probably going to have $400,000 of costs just to get to it. So do you spend it on infrastructure getting to a lot, or do you spend it on buying a piece of property?
Plus, it's a 2-acre lot, whereas the one Clayton was offering was 4 acres.
Right. Now, he'd be willing to, off that East Point Avenue, give whatever we need to make the fire station work. But you got to extend the road to it, and you got to extend the water and sewer to it. So those are basically the 4 options. And this one on Oak Level Road, the fire chief and I need to get together with David and see, those woods that show up on this aerial photo, last year he had them cleared out. There's not woods there anymore. And it's pretty flat, level ground to begin with. Kind of surprised he hadn't been farming it prior to that, but anyway. So, I don't know if in this budget year we're going to get around to building a fire station. I sure hope so. As I pointed out with Clayton Homes, getting further explanation from their general manager here, it's not that for lack of desire on the local general manager and management of the Clayton Homes here that 4 acres, it has to do with their corporate structure. And
Did you reach out to Berkshire Hathaway?
my calls, I haven't gotten any response to them, Louise.
That would be the horse's mouth.
Yeah. So
'Cause they
the
own
name
Clayton.
that you gave me, I've gone through the corporate directory and left messages, but I haven't gotten a call back yet.
What about Charlie Munger? Did you reach out to him?
No, I didn't reach out. Do you got a number for Charlie?
I do, but I don't have it with me.
Okay, I'll get it from you
But I
later.
mean, you could probably get, if I can find it, you could find it.
Well, Clayton Homes, every time you put a Google search on them, all you get is their dealers. You don't get the actual corporate.
But I was able to get Kevin's number at corporate.
So that's where we are on Fire Station 2. And
So without land, does that hinder our grant?
I don't think so. We just need to find a place to build it before we can get the grant. Keep our fingers crossed on that.
Reach out to the governor.
Well, I thought we had an excellent opportunity to work with the governor on a property on.
Or did you work with this intermediary or,
Well, worked with who's the registered agent for that corporation, and that was, what I was told. They thought it would. No.
So the Coopers on that part right there by the railroad track?
Pell
Clarendon.
and Cook?
Clarendon.
Hmm.
Not the
I
cards.
talked to Pale. I'm pretty close to Pale.
So.
His phone. Hello?
Anyway, we can move on. Recreation.
So just to reestablish programming, just to, as you recall, last year, that department was cut just about in half or more, just because there was no department head at the time, and really nobody to run programming. So we're reestablishing programming. We're adding another second-time full position there, just like there was before. There used to be 3 positions, so now we're bringing it back to 2. That's $142,000. We're implementing a master plan and a Glover Park zip line, $23,000. We're going to use capital reserves to pay for that. Farmers Market.
Who put the request in for zip lines? This is first I've heard about zip line.
Our Park and Rec Director, Coy.
Okay.
There's been a lot of public,
Interest in zip lines.
yes, a whole lot of public interest from.
I think the county's new park, the Miracle Park, there's a waiting line for kids to
and
grab
they've
hold of
got,
that thing and
The
go.
Red Oak Park
Can we
has
check a
one,
break
and
for
so
a moment?
that's
I need
the
to run
reason we're
home
here.
right
Why
quick.
doesn't Nashville
I
have
need to
one?
run home and unlock something, and I'll be right back.
Exactly.
That's the mayor.
Mayor, I need to run to the house real quick.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
You guys want to take a break while Larry's
If you
gone?
take a
or-
break, I'll be back. We'll break's over with.
That works.
I just took a break. I had to take a break.
Getting that land in Clarendon, they could get a good town.
We just talked about the recreation.
Okay,
Those numbers there. The 142 to reestablish programming there kind of gets us back to where we were prior to last year. If you recall, last year we did cut that budget quite significantly. I mean, there was no
program.
I mean, there was no programming or anything.
okay.
So what's our total budget for recreation?
In this 142, is that 20,000 included in that we give the county?
That 20,000 is a contingency, and that's in the 10,660 budget.
But that's part of the budget for recreation.
This is just the increase.
Yeah, this
These
is
show the
operating
This is
cost
just
increase.
increase.
Of recreation.
Yeah.
That's
Includes the salaries and program costs and things of that nature.
so we're right back where we started from when we cut.
Yes.
So what is that?
I think it's 330. It's in here somewhere, a summary.
I think when Marguerite was here, it was like 368.
Yeah, or it got to 399 at some point, so it's still not quite up to where it was, but it does put him back to where.
Down the road, I'd like to see the participation level for each thing that we do.
Right.
Yeah, Coy can report on that.
And it would be nice to see in-town and out-of-town, see what the participation is.
They
Since
have-
the in-town residents, pay the big bill.
So we are proposing to do those fee increases, so the in-town would pay just the cost of the program, which it's historically been free, but the in-town residents would just pay the cost. And then out-of-town would be cost plus, I think, I can't recall what it says, $30 or 30% or something like that. It's in the fee schedule. So that would definitely, we'll definitely start tracking in-town versus out-of-town.
This, the Tree City money is now in the recreation department.
It is. It does include Tree City as well. It's got the 42 for the master plan, and then that Glover Park zip line.
And we cannot get grants unless we have that plan. Isn't that correct?
Hard out.
The big
Right.
grants.
Now, the orange, pink ribbons went on the trees in Washington yesterday. I don't
The ones that need to come down.
know if anybody got a phone call yet.
Get ready.
I have.
Get ready.
Get ready. Yeah.
I have.
Do we really want to divvy in this zip line?
He's got some renderings, some visual renderings of it.
That would be
Maybe
nice
that
to
would
see.
be good for you guys to see that, because we're not talking about this huge thing. It's kind of just a small little basic thing.
Yeah, it's not the cable thing that you get all strapped up in.
With the liability.
I may actually have it in
That's
my
what I'm
emails.
looking at.
Nice guy.
Liability.
I'm looking at liability.
This is the thing kids just hang on from a track.
Any park you have, you've got liability.
Is it like
If
the
they
one
fall,
over
slip
at
off.
Yeah,
Cooper's?
but
Okay.
$23,000.
Everything's expensive when you get park stuff for children.
Because
Because we used to get
it is
school
liability.
stuff and it was outrageous what we paid for it.
Well, what we need to do is see something instead of just,
Yeah.
I've got.
You got it?
I think he sent that to us a while back.
Who paid for
Here
the
it is.
park at Cooper's? The county?
I don't recall which one
Yeah.
he's talking about.
Yeah,
there.
It was so
think-
many people over there 2 Sundays ago. I
was
just
the
turned around and
34
brought my
foot or
grandchildren
66
back to the school.
Well, our park. Have you been going down to Glover Park lately? When I came in Sunday afternoon late from the weekend, that place was packed full. It is packed. I mean,
people are looking at
they are wearing it out. That's the third time I've been down there on a weekend, and it's no parking spaces anywhere. They
But
park all over the
that's
school.
what we want. We want people using our
Yeah,
parks
we do.
and
We do.
everything. But the zip lock is the big thing now at every park for children.
So, well,
Because after I found out it
Did I
wasn't.
not plug you in right
can
there,
adults
Sam?
use it?
you know
Yeah,
why
we
it's
got
not
an
showing?
use.
I did. Not one here, but I've been on one at a kid's park down in Georgia.
Was it fun?
No, it's got something to do with the way
I
my.
loved it. My grandkids loved it. And it
Oh,
was a
yeah?
huge one. We aren't looking at anything like what they had.
How far off the ground?
Well, it has a platform that you walk up in order to get on it. And then, of course, it brings you down. So you're probably, your feet are maybe that far off the ground by the time you come down the middle of it. But it is the big hit. I took my grandkids out to Red Oak Park the other day, and that's where the kids are standing in line, one right after another.
Red Oak's got a zip line?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing about it, we can use any of the parks in the county because
That's right.
we can support them with our
I would
taxes.
love to be doing ours,
Yeah.
personally, because it's closer, for one thing.
Sam, what was the date of that
I didn't know Red had one.
email?
The email, you sent it
Right out there and take a look.
I wish the county would
April
invest,
6th.
since
And
we
it's
do
got
their
the,
sports,
shade
let them
structure
do
in there,
that
too.
with some things out at
Boys and
ours
Girls,
like they did
Boy
over at
Scouts shade
Cooper's.
structure in that same
Well,
email.
I think we need to start talking to them and
I
ask
do too.
You want to forward it to
them.
me?
Open the lines of
It's been
communication.
forwarded.
Let's
I'll
get some
forward it to you again here.
cooperation.
Gee, they might want to do the zip
My
line.
internet's not working.
If they pay for
Well,
it, it's
so-
on me if they put it at Glover Park.
Absolutely.
Since we do the 20,000 capital improvement every year.
Well, like I said,
Something we need to
ask.
talk about.
Ask and you shall receive.
That's right.
And you have not because you asked not.
Getting really biblical here.
No, it's not coming
Computer
through.
issues, Sam.
I don't know. I can't get it to view. I don't know why, but we can print that off for you. But well, Larry, he can see it. It's basically what
I
it looks
see.
like.
Yeah.
We can print that off for you.
Oh, that's
Thank you,
okay.
Dad. Yeah.
I'll ride over to Red Oak and look at that. I didn't know they had one.
And so he's also got a picture of the shade structure that the Boy Scouts
Gonna put it up.
presidents to do for us.
That would be nice because I've had people to say they wish there was somewhere
Yes.
out there that they could sit and
Yeah.
eat while the children played or whatever.
For us old folks that
I
want
know.
some
I just
shade
sit in the
and a place
car.
to sit, yeah.
Randy, didn't the Elks contribute some,
Picnic tables.
picnic tables?
Yeah,
To the park?
yeah, four of them.
They're out there?
Yeah, they're the blue picnic tables.
Oh, okay.
So there's a place where you can sit and eat while you
Yeah.
wait for your
All
children.
it needs is no umbrella.
It's really small.
In the shade shelter that the Boy Scout is doing,
I went out to the cemetery to see the finished prayer garden.
So that's what they're talking about
Oh, yeah.
to do for us. So we'll put the concrete pad in, and we're going to split the cost of this structure, but they're going to install it.
2,500.
Yep, and that's going to be their community service project.
It's not bad.
no,
All right.
Okay, moving on. Farmers Market. So it's going to be its own separate budget. $61,000 for the operating cost. And parking lot and common area. So we're going to use some capital reserves for that, and then the rest is going to be general fund dollars.
But that's still a big if, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we've got $275 budgeted for the project at this time. Streets. We're going to replace one truck, one of the service vehicles. Streets and sidewalk improvements, we've got $350 for street improvements. And sidewalk improvements, we've got $50,000. Historically, we spend way less than that. We usually just take our PAL funds and spend whatever the PAL fund allocation is. We're going to get into that a little bit more, but our PAL fund allocations are decreasing year by year. So we need to really change our strategy. We're really behind on that street and sidewalk improvement plan. So we've got a plan to resurface all of our streets within 8 years, and this is a figure that can get us there. We've got.
And you're going to try to get us a loan interest rate better than 3.5?
Yes, I'm pretty confident. Yeah.
Is that
I do have
something
to
we
go
need
to
to
the-
lock in right away because
you think they're
Well-
going to go up?
Oh, I know they are.
$6 trillion in the gummy, you could watch the 10-year. 10 years.
That's what I was thinking about a while ago. We might need to go on and look at that money, borrowing that money, and
The feds can control the overnight, but they cannot control
Long
the
range.
10-year.
all right.
And once that gets away from us,
So this is a 15-year loan. It requires LGC approval because it's an infrastructure improvement.
How long does that typically take from the time you submit it to the LGC till you get a thumbs up from them?
Right now, it's taken a while because they've got a wait list of people waiting to see them because everybody's.
It's several months because they want you to come and have a sit-down meeting
Yes.
with them, which I think is a good thing. So, you and Sam and Brenda, and if another council person wanted to go, they could. That's the initial talk where you kind of lay out the plan, and they either say, looks okay, go forward, or do some more work. But I think you'll be ready to go forward with it once you get there. But it's like Sam's saying right now, everybody's, because the rates are so low, everybody's
Right.
trying to go more. But it's going to take several months at least, once you get the meeting even.
Yeah, and they want to see, I mean, they want to see your fully fleshed out plans.
Yeah.
Total cost, exact cost, all the engineering, everything. That has
How
to
long
be
would it
done
take us to
first.
get that together?
We'd probably bid it out. I mean, I would say bid it out now.
Oh, they
I mean,
want
as soon
actual
as-
bid prices.
Yeah, they want to know
We
all
might
of
need to
that.
go on with that and then go meet with them
Okay.
when we can get an appointment.
Well, we had Slurry Seal come last week and go through, and I talked to the guy yesterday, and to show them, you know, we have FY19, 21, and 22, 3 years worth, and he's talking a combination of chip seal with a slurry seal over top of it. He thinks we'll take care of most of our streets that are on that list.
And how long will that last?
That should be 8 to 12 years, depending upon traffic.
Because
Yeah.
some of the slurry that we've had done has been very iffy.
Yeah, well, it has been.
And one thing that was wrong with it
But
is
not
they,
from this
they
company.
put it down when it was too hot.
Oh,
And that makes it not, because I've questioned that by
So-
my house, and they
Yeah.
said they put it down when it was too hot.
the process he's talking about, say Golfer's Lane, they put it, they spray an emulsion over, which is kind of like a tar, but it's an emulsion, and then they cover it with thin 3/8 inch limestone chips, and then let the traffic roll that real good, and let the traffic drive on for a couple weeks, and then they come and do a slurry seal over top of that. That's what he's talking about, and for about $380,000, everything we had on the list for those 3 years can be chip sealed and slurry sealed, but that doesn't include crack sealing. It doesn't include sawing out and repairing. So we probably will have to back off on some of that FY22 list, but we can catch up next year on that.
And we do have some bad places on Main Street. And a lot of people walk on our Main Street, but there's a place where they put cement or something to where there's raised, and now that's cracked. And it's coming out. Sidewalks, yes.
Oh yeah. Anyway, continue on, Sam.
Upgrading the town Christmas tree, we'd like to do that. That's been a popular request on the list. We will split the cost of that between general fund and MSD.
Would the chamber participate in that as well?
They plug it in.
Is this an artificial tree?
It is.
It,
With lights already on it and everything, right?
Yeah.
And you add on it till you get it as big as it will to fit on there. We won't be able
So
to
what's
get...
the final cost? When
10,000.
it's complete? When it's complete?
Oh,
Depends on how you go with it.
So this is for a 20-foot pre-lit tree.
This is for 20 feet.
I mean, the chamber's not done anything for the town basically for 2 years.
Nope.
If you consider that we've not had a blooming festival now 2 years running, why couldn't they be willing to
Pitch in.
help out?
is this a tree that would be taken down? Okay, and stored?
Like red oaks.
I haven't seen that.
They have a beautiful one. Theirs is as big as you get, I think, just about.
I guess I need to patronize Red Oak more, since they got everything.
No, we want you to stay here and we want you to town.
We want to have what they've got, but see, they don't have a fire department.
No, they don't.
That they have to pay for, or
They don't have a
police.
police department, they don't have a fire department, they don't have...
And they get a lot of donations.
Well, our battleship is kind of unique.
It
You
is.
know,
It is.
we have something
And we
that
need
they
to-
definitely don't have.
Accentuate
Exactly.
the battleship.
This gives us a lot of opportunities, for Christmas tree lightings in town and things of that nature.
I want us to have a food truck night and have food trucks there and music and just let everybody get out and have a good time. Since we didn't have a blooming festival or anything. But we need to work with the chamber. We need to become true intertwined with them for the good of Nashville, I think.
Well, I reached out to, only because I had Amy's email address about, Bailey just had that street party. And I asked, what is our chamber proposing? Well, they've got a chamber members event, but we need something that's engaging
Envelops the whole town.
our citizens, especially now that things are starting to open up and people getting out a little bit more than they were.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, moving right along.
In the
Okay, all right.
Water and Sewer Administration,
I'll take care of it.
just adding a little bit of additional funds for postage.
Is that because of the billing changing from the postcards?
Yes, if I can ever continue and finish up with this financial software upgrade, I'll probably sleep better at night. But also, the postage will require to be increased because we'll do away with the postcards. We're going to do regular size letters.
Is this the Pitney Bowes thing?
It is not. It's right now our bills are on those little postcards. I
Right.
think that's only 28 cents.
It costs more to do the...
But when we move to like a letter, which will be the new billing format, it's going to be a regular
It's going to be
stamp.
40. What is the rate? 48?
I think we do get a discount with the Pitney Bowes.
You get a discount. It's going to be
But
up
the
at
letter gives
40.
us opportunity if we need to send messages out
Right.
to the
Absolutely.
community and
And
other
cards
stuff into
and
it.
things like that.
I do also think because of the fee increases, we should send a letter out this year.
I agree,
Explain
explain it
that.
in great detail.
Because we didn't send a letter last year and got a lot of complaints about that, so this would provide some funds to be able to do that. Water operations, we've got a active plan in place here for infrastructure maintenance. So we're beefing that up quite a bit in water and sewer. So you see leak location survey, it's $10,000. This is something that really needs to be done annually, and so you'll see that year by year. Cross-connection control, this is something that I believe Lee Brown had come before council with an ordinance amendment on that. This just puts funds in place to implement that. Replacing the truck, that's what those capital reserve funds are for. And in sewer operation, sewer line cleaning and televising, we're just going to do a section at a time, year by year. So we'll see funds for that every single year. Consultant for fats, oils, and greases. So in our sewer surcharge discussions that we've been having with Rocky Mount, we've made some discoveries about fats, oils, and greases and as it relate to our restaurants. So right now, we're charging surcharges to the restaurants. It's certain ones. They'd be a better fit for our fats, oils, and grease program because that is actually the type of contaminant that they are.
And then your
contributing to the
grocery
system.
stores that provide meals.
That's
Yes.
right. So this implementing a fats, oils, and greases program helps us on the front end as far as the sewer surcharge.
I think that will help us a lot.
So that's a big part of that surcharge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just getting it right. Yes.
Okay, and
So it's a
and
step.
it's mostly commercial entities that are causing this, right?
Restaurants and grocery stores. Things like that.
It's
But our
cumulative.
residential customers are having to pick up the tab for a lot of this.
They do contribute some, but it would be residential. I mean, this program is for commercial entities.
You know, most towns that have their own sewer treatment plant, they consider everybody domestic waste, with the exception of their industrial users. And then they bill their industrial users for sewer surcharges. You know, the COD, the BOD, the total suspended solids, pneumonia, and nitrates that they add. Now, every user contributes to that, but because we're a wholesale customer of the city of Rocky Mounts, we're considered by Rocky Mount as one large user. One large user. So all of our ratepayers contribute to whatever the sewer surcharge costs are. Now, in theory, they all contribute to it cumulatively, but as you mentioned, Louise, there are users that significantly contribute to that volume more so than others. And we're in the process of tracking down a couple of those that have kind of that haven't been in a pre-treatment program before, and the city of Rocky Mount is willing to bring their pre-treatment program over and implement it and actually do the sewer sampling of these large users, tell us what the concentrations are, and then we would bill them directly for the sewer surcharges. That would help us pull in revenue to then pay to Rocky Mount for sewer surcharges.
We're going to check all of our restaurants. And
Well, that's problematic, Larry, and that's why Sam and Lee are proposing a fats, grease, and oil fee, just a flat fee
Across the
of
board.
$25 for every restaurant.
across the board for everybody.
Yes. after an initial enrollment fee.
Okay.
And the reason why, because almost all the restaurants, it's physically impossible to find the sewer line that comes out of their restaurant and be able to put a sampler hose in it and pull a sample,
Okay.
because a lot of times there just isn't enough flow, and then when that sampler every 15 minutes pulls a sample, all it does is suck air and you don't get a sample.
Nothing there. Okay, I got you.
And to do grab samples isn't really fair either. It needs to be a composite sample to be a true representative of what over time they contribute. So
you would just get all the fast food places and the grocery stores,
And the restaurants.
cafeterias, restaurants, and
Just
grocery
charging
stores.
flat rate.
So our residential, the increases that we're having in water and sewer are influenced by this.
It is.
So the residential users are,
Footing the bill.
Well, so they're actually going to be paying, start to pay their fair share as far as this program is considered. Because they're going to have to pay an enrollment fee plus
The restaurants.
a monthly fee.
Yeah.
The restaurants.
And then
For
the
this
big
program.
users, like the prison, the jail, Clayton Homes and Atlantic Foods, those are the four that we're going to sample. Continue. The prison and the jail we're already sampling, and the other two we're going to begin.
so when do their fees kick in?
So we're already charging the prison and the jail. We've just recently sampled Atlantic Natural Foods, and they're going to start coming online next month. And then we're working on Clayton Homes, just being able to get a good sample for them.
Because residential users are going to say, wait a minute, we're picking up the tab for,
What kind of rates?
They are, and I don't know if we
Charging.
can completely
What are we
eliminate
charging?
that, Louise, in our
The
fee
same-
structure.
for
well, we need to be
surcharges,
straightforward
we
with them
charge
about
exactly
it.
what
You know,
Rocky Mountain
in
charges.
any kind of newsletter. Just-
And
It's
the
all
reason we
different.
can't
It's
is
like a
because
whole
the
table
way Rocky
depending
Mountain
on
treats
the
us
contaminants
their
and
sewage.
Okay.
Kind of a
Does Rocky Mountain do this for all their other user towns?
I'm assuming, yes, all their other towns are considered a wholesale or a large user, and their residents pay a sewer surcharge just like we do. But
So we don't have much choice because we're dependent on them.
yeah, and Rocky Mountain has a strong desire to treat all of its large wholesale users exactly the same and not have a different program for anybody.
And we one of
Well,
them.
we don't have any alternative because we certainly can't site a sewer treatment plant.
No.
Well, it'll take a couple of years if we do, and about $20 million.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The money is just,
And as Louise pointed out, NCDEQ wants these things regionalized more so than more. They want less.
they want less. We're buying roughly 60% of our water.
Producing about 40.
What about well number 6? What's the latest?
Well, the latest, Lee had that meeting with them on Friday, and I haven't talked to him since about that. He was out yesterday.
Still pumping air.
He's back to the damn thing.
And that's our largest producer. Well, yeah.
I think what we're probably going to have to do is put a variable speed drive on that thing and just turn the RPMs down. I don't know. That's one of the options. Or if somebody can figure out why, maybe we need to encase the well shaft deeper, and that'll keep those air pockets from being pulled in that are underground and up with the water.
Moving on here, industrial user sewer meter. We've got one large industrial user in town. They've got 2 meters there, 2 water meters there. One we assess a sewer fee on. The other meter, it's always been assumed that meter, all of that water is used in production, so they've not historically been charged sewer charges. But we are in the process of testing that assumption to determine whether or not they really should be charged sewer. And if it is determined that they should be charged, we're going to put this meter there, and we're going to begin to charge them their fair share of the sewer.
So that'll help take some of that burden off of the residential user and put it onto the actual user of the service.
Correct. And this number may change. We may want to, now, CFE right now is not occupied, but CFE doesn't have a sewer meter there either. We might want to consider putting one out there also, because we're using a calculation of runtime. It's a different kind of calculation. But if we had a sewer meter there, we could actually charge the actual sewer charge. So we're trying to tackle this thing at every possible angle. We've got, like I say, we've got a revenue problem, we've got an expense problem. But this is kind of one of those revenue problems where we need to make sure we're capturing all the revenues, especially from the large industrial users, making sure they're not taking advantage.
What's the cost of a meter?
The cost is $30,000, but if what we're thinking is correct, I mean, you're probably looking at $100,000 in sewer revenue.
You're coming in.
Yeah, so I mean, pay for itself in a few months.
Well, let me ask, well, I don't guess I better ask that. Move on.
Okay. Septic system failures, that was something that was discussed in a previous council meeting. We've got the $15,000 there. We may or may not have to spend that. In the stormwater fund, we've got several projects here. $20,000 for ditch cleaning repair. We'll see that cost repeat itself year by year. 4th Street Park Avenue drainage improvement project. Indian Trail drainage improvement, $20,000. We're going to use capital reserve funds for that. It was already identified as a project in previous years, so money was already allocated for that.
How about the one on 4th Street and Park Avenue? How long has that been like that?
Did you want to talk about that one, Randy?
Well, it was brought to our attention just within the last 6 months that there's a gaping gorge
It looks like the Grand Canyon.
through there, and
And this was repaired about 5 years ago. Stops. And I don't know how much money was expended, probably, with Rip Rock down there was probably $10,000 at least, and it didn't work.
the grade's too steep for an open waterway, so the pipe needs to be repaired.
So where is it at?
It goes diagonally from 4th Street to Park Avenue.
Is that the one on the edge of your yard?
Okay.
Larry, you can come to my yard and I'll show it to you.
It's over by your place?
Goes
Okay.
right through. The pipe goes through my yard, but it opens up, And as I said, 5 years ago, it was not big, but with all the rain that we've had, it's just eroded.
Okay.
And we've got a general fund loan repayment, $40,000, so that would be paid in 8 years. Police special revenue. So this is a new fund. As I previously mentioned, the police department has amped up its drug enforcement operations. They're starting to receive sizable amounts of seizure money from the federal government and also states. And so we've created a separate fund for that. Of course, both of these funds are individually supposed to be kept separate too. And so that's being done. But this is how it's going to work. What they receive in the current year, we can allocate next year. Okay, so that's how we make sure that they have what they're receiving. They're actually what's being allocated. They actually have already received in funds. Okay, so we have to receive it first, then we allocate it. And so right at this time, they've got about a $20,000 balance, but we're not going to allocate all of it. We'll keep some of it in their fund balance there. And so at this time, they've got $10,000 to start with. And they've already allocated a couple of projects for that. Water and sewer, capital project fund, that's a new fund this year. We're amping up our infrastructure improvements, and we've got a pretty aggressive plan in place here.
We need it.
So we've got the asset inventory assessment. We've applied for grants several years in a row here. We were not successful in obtaining that grant, so we just need to go on and get that done. It's pretty contingent on, everything else kind of falling in line.
Well, this covers the entire town, is that right?
It does. Includes the whole town. It includes a 10-year capital improvement plan,
And a rate study.
a rate study, as well as GIS mapping of the entire system.
Good.
And so hopefully we will find, just based on that 10-year capital replacement plan, we'll kind of know what other projects we need to tackle in what priority. We've got water system leak repairs in the amount of $15,000. Joyner Street fire hydrant repair, $30,000. Replace 2-inch galvanized steel water lines, $100,000. Regency Essex sewer project engineering, $80,000, or possibly some grant funds we could use for that. Cook Road preliminary report, $6,400. Rocky Mount sewer outfall cleaning and televising, $235,000. And the reason for the high cost of that is it's in the woods, so we have to clear the area. before we can even get to that. And so you're going to see cleaning and televising year by year. But we're going to get to that section first. Sewer slip lining and point repair, it's $100,000. Once again, that's going to be a cost you'll see year by year because we should be slip lining and point repair, different sections every year. Hadley Ridge grinder and manhole installation, $50,000. Eastern Avenue road widening at manhole number 10, $89,000. Installing a velocity meter at the sewer outfall, $13,000. Hopefully that's going to solve our issues as far as the discrepancy between
Readings.
yes, readings. And replacing failed well pumps. We had
How many more well pumps do we have to replace?
Well, we only have 2 left.
That's what I was thinking. We about replaced them all.
Well, you know, we have manhole pumps, lift station manholes, and we still have 12 of those, and each one's got 2 pumps in it. So
there's some money in the actual Fund 30 to replace some lift station pumps. It's not using these funds, but it's in there. as well.
Randy, you were talking about the Hadley Ridge grinder. Do you think Holly Smith would throw in?
I'm hoping so. I haven't reached out to her yet, but you know, the concern is that goes to the wheelless lift station, and we know the problem we had at Aviation with flushable wipes and adult diapers getting flushed down. It's just a hunch that we think we may have similar issues coming out of Hadley Ridge Senior Living Center, and we have the grinder left over from the Elm Street lift station. 50,000 is probably much more than what's needed to actually put it in a manhole and run power to it and hook it up, but that's what we put in there. And what that would do, anything comes through the flow line, it shreds it, small pieces. Then when it hits the wheelless lift station, it pumps right through and doesn't plug up.
So that would be proactive. Head off what we experienced before.
Yeah,
on
because
aviation.
wheelless is one of them. You know, we had Strickland do the elevations, and we can't gravity flow that one. It sets lower than the fallout
Which one is
line.
that? You
Which one's
can't
it?
gravity flow.
That's
The
what
one
our
at
paperwork
Wheelless
yesterday.
Drive.
Okay.
Well, since there's 84
We're gonna get half of it
apartments,
this year and the other half
might
next year.
contribute to this.
By the end
Maybe
of this fiscal year, we'll get half of it.
Holly Smith, I don't know.
Pretty confident
Yeah.
we'll get that. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
She's been very receptive to, you know, shaving off the hillside there and make them drive. And
What about the blocks? Are they going to come down?
they are. They already took 2 rows off and replaced the top block down. So
Have you all been in there to see if you can make a left out of there without killing yourself?
I've been meaning to go
I
through
did.
there and do that. I need to
I made a
try that.
left, but it wasn't easy.
Not, it's still not easy. I'm telling you.
It's gonna be-
I'm driving my truck all the time, so I'm looking over everything. I hadn't been in there. Every time I go by there, I say, I'm supposed to go in there.
Sam,
you know,
have we received the American Recovery Act funds yet? So we know that they're
No.
coming, but they're
That's
not.
what I
Just
just
those
asked.
paperwork out yesterday.
Is there a deadline? I'm talking about when they, said that we'll get it.
So we're set to receive half of it by the end of this fiscal year, so pretty soon. And the next half will be next fiscal year. And I believe we've got 5 years to spend it,
Yeah.
but we'll probably spend it in a couple.
I think they have to print the money first.
They probably do.
As long as it's good.
So I'm not going to go over this whole list, but you can just read through. These are some of the major items that were not funded. We made lots and lots of cuts. This is not a full list of all the things that we cut. This is just a sample of some of the things that we cut.
This looks like a big fat tax increase.
It just didn't fit, so they didn't make it in. In the HR tab, just started off with an organizational chart so you can see how we're laid out. We did add some positions. We added a part-timer for the library. She requested a full-timer, but that was reduced down to part-time.
Yeah, I saw
I know it's so
that.
small, I was not able to make it larger. And then we did add another staffer for Parks and Rec. We also had a part-time employee for the farmer's market. It's a marketing coordinator.
But that's an if, right?
That's right. And several requested positions were not funded, 5 in the police and 3 in fire. Page 17, this was prepared by Lou Bunch. This is the salary study that she prepared for us. You can read through that and see the methodology that she used to determine her figures. She provided 3 different options as far as on page 26, you see the options for implementation. And her recommendation is option 1. And she provides her reasoning for that.
And that's the one you programmed into this proposed budget?
That's correct.
And that does not include taxes and benefits.
It does.
The 171 includes that?
Well, let's see, her number might not.
I don't think it does.
But you've got the whole amount.
Yeah, the whole amount's in the budget, though.
Okay. So that was the 208.
Page 28 is a full list of all of the positions and a total breakdown of the cost. So that tells you everything. And we've done the same on page 30 for the part-time salaries. You see for each position, part-time position, the total cost of that. The next tab is revenues. So we're assuming a 3% increase in property taxes and a 98% collection rate. That's going to bring us up to $2.3 million. And you can see that property taxes have increased modestly over the last decade. Next, we're looking at sales and use tax.
And it should be higher this year with all the residents. New stuff.
This past year was a little over 4% increase. That was probably the highest year of growth that we've had. Usually it's around 1%. So,
And we're projecting 3.
yes, 3% was used
Okay.
for budget purposes. Sales and use tax, you can see that our sales and use tax allocations have increased steadily, including even in the current year in which we were projecting we were going to have a decrease. We actually did have an increase. It's increasing about 3% year by year, pretty steady. We use 2.5 to balance for budget purposes.
Is that what the league recommends?
That's right. So we're a little bit more conservative. But I'm predicting that we'll probably get more sales tax revenue than what we're budgeting. Motor vehicles, that's decreased steadily over the years. We're using a 2.5% increase for budget purposes.
You think that increases because people have more vehicles, or they're just more expensive? So when you apply the tax rate, it brings in more money? Probably the latter.
I don't think so.
Franchise taxes are highly unsteady.
Maybe they increase this year.
There's not really a good pattern. You've got electricity tax, telecommunications tax, and video programming tax. The telecommunications and video programming taxes, those have been decreasing pretty steadily year by year. Electricity tax is pretty volatile, and the league has proposed a slight increase in that, while a decrease in the other two. So we're actually, we're pretty much budgeting zero growth there. And in the fire district, those taxes have been growing pretty steadily year by year, between 3 and 5%. We're using 2.5 for budgeting purposes.
How much is that 15 cents per 100 bring in?
Is about 500, over 500,000. I can't quite recall the figure. 581, 595, something like that is what I budgeted. Sanitation fees, those have been in a declining state over the last few years, but we did raise the rate last year. We're proposing to raise the rate slightly again this year. So there was a small increase. Some of the other revenues that we collect: program fees, donations, grants, automobile sticker fees, alcoholic beverage excise tax, and other miscellaneous. That accounts for 17%. Interest earnings. They're still at a historical low. We've had to change our strategy as far as how we're investing the money. Hopefully we can pick it back up a little bit next year, but it's still budgeting pretty much no growth there. On page 35, I've got an error. I apologize. I put a 20-cent tax. That's a 10-cent tax. So please, I apologize for that. So we've used 2.5% growth for budgeting purposes in that as well.
And how much does that bring in every year, the MSD?
About 40,000, 40,000. Stormwater fees, you see this, the fees have been pretty inconsistent. I think I'm looking at 2020. You look at MSD and stormwater taxes. I honestly believe the reason why those two have dipped is because of the basis of accounting. It's just an accounting issue. The revenue was recorded in these 2 years prior as they were billed, but they really should be booked as received.
Well,
So I'm thinking 2018 and 2019, the numbers are a little too high.
well, okay, everybody is billed $30, right, on their tax bill for stormwater fee.
Yeah, it's $2.50
25 per month.
Yeah, ERU per month. So yes, about 30.
Mine is 30, so I guess yours is 30, everybody else. So I don't see why that would be down in
Fluctuating.
2020.
I think the reason is because in 18 and 19, the numbers are overstated because of the basis of the way they did the accounting those 2 years. They recorded revenue when they sent out the bill. They should have recorded the revenue
When it came
when they
in.
collected it. So that was changed
Well,
last
that
year.
was stupid.
We had some changes last year, and so I think that's the reason why those numbers look like that.
That's scary.
PAL funds, you see that PAL funds have been declining year by year. We still don't know what our allocation is going to be next year. I'll send that information out as soon as I receive that. But the reason for us changing our strategy for streets and sidewalk improvement is these funds are decreasing, and we don't know about we don't know what that's going to look like in previous years.
I think there's strong support in the legislature to continue Powell bill. So hopefully.
Good,
Good.
very good.
Because municipalities all over the state depend on that.
Yeah.
And when that dries up, then where do you go?
They need to share those motor fuel tax with the jurisdictions that have street obligations.
But they're probably also thinking about EVs and with less fuel tax.
Well, some of those higher growth towns where they're building a lot of streets, they're adding mileage in their streets, their allocation is increasing. Where we're not adding mileage, so in proportion, our allocation is decreasing. So I think that's another reason why our allocation is decreasing every year. Our mileage is remaining steady, but there are some places where they're adding miles, so they're getting more.
How about we extend Eastern Avenue? That gives us more.
Well, it's a state route, so no,
Right.
it won't.
All right, looking at page 38, the fee schedule. Going through all the proposed changes there. One change that I would like to propose, I would like to change the utility deposit to say up to $200, and that's going to require us to change the customer service policy. The amount of the deposit would likely be assessed based on a person's creditworthiness. So if a person has been a prior customer with the town of Nashville, and over the most recent year, they had no late payments, then they can have their security deposit waived. But if they have, for example, been a customer and they've had 2 payments that were late or more, then their security deposit should be higher. Anyway.
So you're saying if you have good credit, waive the deposit?
Correct.
Okay.
If you have no credit, the deposit would be $100. And if your credit is poor with the town, the deposit would be $200. And then once again, the utility deposit without a social security number, just to increase that number to $200. Public utilities, the water and sewer rates, you can see those changes there. So what we've done is we've taken those assessed minimum increases and we've rounded that up to the nearest 50 cents.
So the water goes from 1361 to proposed at 19 for a 5/8 inch meter, which most residential customers have a 5/8. That'll be their water base fee, $19 from 1361.
The in-town water rate increases from $4.18 to $4.50.
Yeah, that's on the next page.
The sewer base fee goes from $23.44 to $29. And the sewer rate goes from $9.53 to $15.50.
Everybody finding those lines?
Okay, so the in-town water base fee goes from 1361 to 19.
$19.
Yeah. And then the rate goes from $4.18 per 100 gallon to $4.50 in-town water rate for 100 gallons. And then further down on the page, in-town sewer base fee from $23.44 a month
To 29.
to $29. And then the line right below that, the rate for sewer, $9.53 to $15.50. And then Sam's projections and calculations, that will bring in enough water and sewer revenue to cover the expenses that we're experiencing in both the water and sewer systems at this time. And there's some hope and prayer in here on the sewer side of things. You know, the hope is that we don't have $600,000 in sewer surcharges again for this coming fiscal year like we've experienced in the current fiscal year.
Had you had those before?
Not to that level, ever. No.
Sounds like it's in the
The last time they were that high, we had revenues. They're not in line with our revenues. That's the problem.
Okay, so with the sanitation increase of 187 and the sewer base going to, anyway, looks like there's about $18.73 increase for everybody.
Minimum.
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 People are going to scream.
Well,
We're open for options.
I don't know.
Anybody got any?
these fees break even. I mean, these are break-even fees.
But you tell that to, I mean, I understand that, but, you know, you sell that to,
But we don't have an option.
well, we really need to advertise and explain, because,
I agree with that, but we don't have an option
We just
because
raised it last
yeah,
year,
exactly.
and then we're gonna come
And
back
this
this year
is
with a
big.
$19 increase?
but
Some
we
year-
didn't increase the other tax, so look at that's a
Some
good
years ago,
thing.
some years ago, everybody was screaming about Nashville having the highest water bills, and we got it leveled out. But
And
now-
went in the hole.
Now we're gonna, yeah, basically, you're right. But now we're gonna slap them with a $19 increase.
But we aren't doing it. We have no choice because we went 600. How much extra this year? That
Oh,
threw us.
those crazy service charges.
The was 600 and what? 670.
$600,000.
$600,000.
And part of the reason that we're at this place is because there were years where, in an effort to try to
Save
minimize the burden on the individual user, we probably didn't raise rates when we should have. And so now it's like a pretty substantial catch-up. I'm kind of like Randy. I'm hoping that we're going to see some relief on the sewer side with some of the things that we're doing. And I thought the what you've got here, Sam, as far as, I think it was on page
77. And
where you're talking about what we're going to do, why things are what they are, and then what our plan is. I had tabbed that, but now I can't put my
Yeah.
fingers on it.
it starts on
77, I bet.
Yeah. The bottom of 70, or on the bottom of 80 is what I was looking at, where you've got solutions. to ensure long-term solvency of the water and sewer fund. And then we're showing steps that we're taking to try to make sure that we are getting ourselves to a point of solvency and maintaining that solvency going forward. And it's going to be a bitter pill to swallow this year, I think.
But CFI was a big part of this,
It contributed.
a huge part.
It contributed.
And we experienced that with the prison, about 5 years ago. We just need to be very, very transparent and let people know, because this is,
Yeah, I think some of that explanation that you've got in there needs to be conveyed.
The citizens need to see it, because we aren't doing this because we want to.
No.
I mean,
It hurts us just as badly to do it.
I understand it and understand why we're doing it. And I agree that the only way we're going to resolve the problem that we've got here is to do. We have no other choice. But like Louise said, how are we going to explain it to them? They ain't going to want to hear it.
everybody at this table can pay it.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people
But a
in
lot
this
of people-
town who really, really struggle.
And
And you know that about
this will break their back.
water bills and who pays and who doesn't and who can't.
And page 84 tells some of the story too. Larry, you mentioned comparing our rates to other towns.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I saw that, yeah.
You know, there are many other towns around us that aren't honest about their expenses at this time also, and that's what that far right column, the margin
What page
of
is that?
operating.
What page is that?
84.
84. Well, yeah, I totally understand that, but everybody, I mean, along with your explanation as to why we're increasing it, maybe the citizens need to see this comparison chart. I mean, based on, like, people are real quick to say, well, darn, you raising this up, I'm going to move. Well, which one of these towns you going to move to?
They're going to say flat out mismanagement. Why
Yeah.
all of a sudden in 1 year, when you,
Well, that's the reason I think that those itemized explanations of why we're at this point is so important, that does get conveyed.
I mean, this is really a national, if not global issue. Water and sewer funds all over are historically not doing what they need to do to cover their costs. The state has identified a very long list of water and sewer funds that are just in distress. We received points. We were 2 points away from being on that list.
And once you get on the list, that's when the state comes in and takes over your system.
And what do they do when they take over?
They'll put in place whatever rates it takes.
Yes.
They will put in place the rates it takes to make it solid.
You might need to put that in there, explaining that.
Well, sure, certainly.
Don't you think?
Sure.
I mean, we need to be honest and just let them know this is a real situation, and we, above all, we don't want to impose anything on anybody, but to survive, we don't have an option.
and how did we get to this point?
Well,
Well,
probably not being realistic about what our expenses are.
Yeah.
infrastructure issues. I mean,
And where would we be without the American Recovery Act, the 1.6?
Well,
issuing.
thank God it came when it
I know.
did.
Right.
Because that definitely helps with some of these major costs we've got.
And tightening up that sewer collection system is key, as you guys have probably figured out, because what we end up paying on the expense side, sending our sewage to Rocky Mount, is exponentially increased when we're sending far more water to them than what we're actually selling to our own customers.
And the loss of CFI cost us about $500,000. And you know what really bothers me is that letter was dated, January the 5th or whatever, and we didn't get information on that until March the 9th. And why? Why did it take so long?
Well, we didn't ourselves get the information. I mean, we didn't get the letter until after they'd already closed.
I mean, you're talking about being blindsided. And that's what we budget with that money every year.
So,
And it took us that long to get the information.
so there's a net loss associated with CFI, and I meant to calculate that. I apologize. Some of our costs associated with that have also decreased. We're not purchasing water. We're purchasing less water and producing less water. And we're sending less sewer to Rocky Mount. as a result. So there's a net cost. So I should calculate that and give you that information.
But the thing of it is we budgeted for that. You know, those were expectations. And when you work that into your budget and all of a sudden it's stripped away, you know.
And that's another thing we couldn't help, you know.
But the lag time in finding out, and no heads up whatsoever.
You need to put a good article.
They didn't give us any heads up.
I don't even know if Nash County got
Larry,
it.
at Gateway, you know, did they ever talk to you about that when you were?
No, never heard nothing about it. Never did.
But the Gateway,
It was gone before anybody even mentioned it. As a matter of fact, I think I found out myself by riding out there. I said, ain't nothing going on right here. This place is,
No cars.
ain't nothing here. When did they close? So then when the question came up, well, they've been gone for 30 days already. No, the gateway didn't.
They didn't know to
They didn't
notify
know about it
anybody.
either, based from what I got from
but
them.
I guess what I'm saying is Gateway hooked us up with CFE.
Yeah, right. It did.
So I felt like they had some responsibility in letting us know if they knew anything. Since we wouldn't have been hooked up with CFE at all had it
Right.
not been for Gateway.
If they did, they didn't share anything with us.
Well, they didn't because Nash County pulled out of the Gateway Partnership. So it should have been Nash County Economic Development that informed
No,
us.
the Gateway was our initial, you know,
That's who got us in there.
exactly. The crowd that got us in should have been the crowd that informed us, and that's Gateway.
And they never have said anything about it until the question came up.
They
From
may not
us.
have known either.
Right.
Well, they
Right,
did
that's what I'm saying.
because
They
they
didn't
weren't.
know.
But
They
they are in the
didn't know.
business of knowing.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
they
that's
weren't-
what they do.
But Louise, they weren't doing the business and retention visits on CFE anymore because Nash County took that over.
Right.
That's how you find out about these things is you know, several times a year you go and you look at your biggest industries and you sit down with them and can we help you? What do you got coming up? That's when the knowledge probably would have been communicated to Norris and Oppie if they were still doing the business and retention visits with Universal and CFE. But since they didn't represent that part of Nash County anymore, they didn't do it anymore.
It was on the county's table because the county pulled out.
Started their own economic
Or their
development.
own economic development. So I guess if anybody that should have known would have been the county. But they didn't let us know. Nobody did.
On page 41, commercial sewer surcharges, this is already in our ordinance, but just making it plain
On what page?
for transparency purposes.
41.
41?
We're adding the commercial sewer surcharge language to the fee schedule. We just follow the city of Rocky Mount.
So there would be an initial sign up for that for every restaurant and cafeteria of $250, and then it'll be $25 a month thereafter. Top of page 41. Right
Who
there.
was at the top? Okay, I'm sorry.
Brenda, you got it highlighted, yeah.
For the cemetery, we're not really proposing many fee changes, but just a couple of operating changes. Holiday weekends for residents and non-residents, proposing just to not make that available. And once again, on page 42, we're proposing to not allow holiday weekends and be available.
Well, we had that language in it once before, and somebody in town passed away, one of our dignitaries, and we waived it and went to, because they had a weekend funeral. I can't remember who it was. Who the hell was it? I can't remember. But we had this language before, and one of our dignitaries, and you remember who it was?
I do remember.
But who was it? Do you remember who it was? That's why we got away from it.
Well, we don't need to be respectful of persons. They all can be very.
We don't have that many, but I mean, the individual, the employee has to be on call. I mean, we've only got 2 employees that do this. I mean, and one of them has to be on call. Somebody's got to be on call every holiday,
Every holiday,
and they've
every
done it for
weekend.
years. So we're just proposing just to
Not
not
to
let
make
that
that
be
available.
available.
So they won't be on
Are
call.
we still having 2 people in the cemetery?
It's still going to be one person paid out of there, but
2 people
the
still
second
working.
person is still going to be on the rotation as far as on call
Okay.
for the weekends. Annual upkeep, we had
But we're doing away with the weekends.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the holiday weekends. They're still going to be on
Good.
call the other weekends, just not holiday weekends.
Okay.
So annual upkeep, it used to be $35 annually, and then it was changed to $150 as a one-time fee. But however, that was set up for the $30 annually to just be grandfathered in. We're proposing we just have just a small handful of people who are still being charged that $30 annual fee. We're proposing just to charge them a $150 fee, either that or just call it good because they've paid for many years at this point, and just eliminate the $30. And then sanitation, the sanitation monthly fee, which includes sanitation, would go from $18.78 to $20.50. And the recycling fee goes from $5.35 to $5.50.
$1.87.
So there's something else added to the
Yes,
bill.
yes.
I added that in that figure.
Page 46, we're proposing to eliminate the fee for voluntary annexation. And then on page 47, you see the Parks and Rec proposed fees.
Sam, how will we determine what the cost is?
Just the supplies plus the hours required to run the program.
And that'll have to be based upon a projection and reviewed after
Yes.
the program runs its course.
So it would be, so he would project that out in advance, and that would be the fee that he would set
Right.
for that program. And so out-of-town residents would be, the service would be provided at cost plus 50%. And buildings and park rental, $50 deposit plus $25 per hour for residents, and $50, the deposit he's making refundable. $50 deposit plus $40 an hour.
And that's for renting the rec center.
Yes.
Have we had anybody to take up on that yet? I don't know.
I thought he had some interest in it, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Page 49, we don't have to go through this entire thing, just I provided you the article that the league publishes every year.
It was interesting to read.
Well, like Sam said, this is kind of a recommendation to fit all, and given your local economic situation, some of the things that they project in here may not hold true for Nashville.
But the bottom line I got out of it is we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, we don't know.
Especially some of those larger places, they experience a lot more volatility.
Yeah.
It seems unlikely, however, that revenue growth will continue at its current pace. So
Well,
that's,
That's definitely true for those larger entities, because they had a steep decline, like Raleigh and places like that. Their revenues declined very sharply, and so they had a steep rebound. And so their revenues are increasing. We didn't have either thing. We didn't have a steep decline. We didn't have a steep rebound. We just pretty much maintained steady. So that their
I had to chuckle when I was reading this, and I read the part about the alcohol. And they said during COVID there was an alcohol increase.
that's a given. Anytime there's a catastrophe, people start drinking.
So I couldn't help but chuckle about that.
We haven't really seen an increase, which I guess is a good thing.
Yeah.
So it's 11:30 right now. When we come, do you want to just go ahead and break for lunch? I know it's early, but when we come back, we can dive into water and sewer and look at the 5-year plan. I'm thinking those are going to be kind of beefy topics.
Okay.
Does that sound good to you all?
I mean, that's what everybody else wants to do, it's fine.
We can get started, but the water and
Kate's not here
sewer.
to worry about childcare.
Right.
We're good.
Pardon?
We can just
I said we
stay
can-
today because Kate.
Because Kate's not here to worry about childcare, so we can
Yeah.
stay here and do what we need to do.
I hate she couldn't come though.
Well, her symptoms.
I'm glad she didn't.
Yeah. She was going to
Anyway.
get tested, she said.
So lunch till 12:30 or?
You guys good with that?
I can have it.
What about 1:45?
4 to 1?
Is that all right?
Okay.
What have you got to do, Louise?
I'm gonna brush my teeth.
That's it.
Or take the dog out. And I remember Dodge Street said, Louise, I didn't know you had a dog. I said, I don't. And he finally figured that out.
They might
Enterprise fund.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get started. So this section is talking about the water and sewer fund, the issues that we've been encountering, and our solutions. So our water and sewer fund is an enterprise fund. And an enterprise fund means that our revenues should be sufficient to cover your expenses. That's how the fund should be set up. So just in this fiscal year alone, we've encountered several issues, several setbacks. Number one, probably the most significant, is that the sewage treatment fees that are charged to us by the city of Rocky Mount are expected to be 34% higher than last fiscal year, even though the total gallons of sewage that the town charges to its customers has only increased by 0.36% over the same time period. So we've got a 34% increase in fees charged by the city of Rocky Mount to us, but the gallons sold to our customers by us has only increased by 0.36%. It's a huge increase. It's definitely a deficit there.
And so that's what we're trying to get a hold of on Carriage Road.
Okay.
Well, and-
36% and 0.36%. Okay.
We have infiltration into our system when we get the really heavy rain and prolonged rainy periods. And it's, it's getting in the sewer and it's going to Rocky Mountain. We're essentially paying them to treat clear water, which we don't need to do. We need to button it up.
So do you
seal
think
it
we're
up.
making headway?
Well, we haven't done anything yet, but this budget has several. We're approaching it from several different standpoints. The televising that we're doing within the collection system to see where it's leaking. Then we have money budgeted to patch those areas when we find them. We're going to clean and televise the sewer fallout line from Old Carriage Road back to
And that's where
First
you have to
Street.
clear the land to get to it.
Yeah.
But the calibrator on Old Carriage Road, is that,
Well, what we're also doing, this budget proposes to put in a velocity meter, not permanently, but for a while, we're going to continue. We're going to buy that velocity meter for $13,000 and have it installed, and then have Clearwater come 4 or 5 times a year, pull it out, clean it up, maintain it, put it back in, so that when we do get those heavy rain periods and Rocky Mount's meter goes underwater, we still have an accurate device in the pipe that's measuring the actual volume going through. And Rocky Mount said they will bill based upon that versus that formula that they've been using for an assumed quantity that they say is going through the pipe when
It's clear water.
when you say Rocky Mount, who is actually taking the responsibility, the person? Brenton?
as far as we will have to, when their meter goes underwater, they will use our meter readings off our velocity meter to bill.
Okay.
Shouldn't we, when they read their meters, read ours simultaneously with them so we can compare them?
We sure can.
Whether we have high water flow or not.
Yeah.
If it's just a normal month, whenever they read their meter, read ours too at the same time.
They did a study with that, doing that for how many months? Two months? Or
It was 3 months.
3 months. And so they saw that during periods of dry times, the meters were pretty much right in line.
They were read.
They were accurate.
They were accurate. Okay.
Within 2%.
It was just
of
when
each
that
other.
extra water
Yeah.
came.
Okay.
So did that answer your question, Louise?
Well, I guess I'm saying, who from Rocky Mount is buying into this? Someone specific?
Benton Brent.
Okay.
He's the one who told me that you put your velocity meter in, when ours goes underwater, we'll use your readings for billing.
Do they get an alert when theirs go underwater?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So number one leads to number two. Sewer surcharges that the city of Rocky Mount charges us are expected to have increased by 60% from last fiscal year.
Sure.
And that's strictly due to the increased volume of sewage that's passing through. And the reason that you've got a 34% increase in sewage, but a 60% in sewer surcharges is because it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It's based on 4 or 5 different chemical factors. And they have this whole formula that they plug those numbers into. And so a 34% increase in sewer charges is actually an even higher percentage increase in sewer surcharges because it's all formula based.
Okay, so this stuff that's being dumped is by commercial entities.
Some of it is, yes. Everybody contributes to it, Louise.
I was in somebody's house and watched them pour the grease out of a frying pan right down the drain.
Oh, Lord.
But the surcharge itself, our suspicion, because we went and looked back at the contaminants and the readings, there are some issues with that, but the main issue is the volume that's being plugged into their calculation.
When you multiply the mass by the volume, you get these high sewer surcharges. But as you've heard me say before, just because there's a greater volume doesn't mean that mass of contaminants or pollutants is any greater.
Right, because
It's the same, but their formula penalizes us based on that volume.
right.
So as long as we have our own meter and our own readings, they'll go by our readings and they won't use the formula.
For when their meter goes underwater, correct? Yes.
They're
And that's
still
where,
gonna
that's
use-
where the discrepancy has been, the big gap between what's actual and what we're being charged.
So that's part of it. The other part is there is probably actual I&I in the system, which needs to be addressed. So we've got a plan in place for that. But I mean, it could take several years, maybe even 5 years. I mean, because you've got to do section by section
Is
of the
this a
town.
slip lining?
Slip lining and point repairs, yeah.
So there's that. Number 3, the town's largest water and sewer customer did discontinue. I will come back to you with a net decrease. So we know how much the revenue decreased, but we need to know how much the expenditures associated decreased as well. Number 4, in the process of restructuring water and sewer rates, we actually reduced the base fee by not including the cost of the first 1,000 gallons into the base fee. And so when I calculated the rates, when I did the rate assessment, I used the correct rate, the rate that it was supposed to have been. And even with the correct rate that it was supposed to have been, there's still a deficit.
So that was our miscalculation last year.
Yes, it's in there in the fee schedule as $13. It should have been $23.
44 cents.
Do we need to explain that to the general populace? I mean,
Yeah, we gave you a break for 9 months,
because of
unintentionally,
miscalculation.
yes. But, probably couldn't have come at a better time for a lot of our users struggling because they were out of work due to COVID.
Number 5. So Lee and his guys replaced almost half of the meter registers in the system. And so what we discovered was these registers were not reliably reading.
They'd been placed in wrong, hadn't they?
Some of them, the leads between the register and the antenna weren't tight enough and it wasn't making a connection. That's why we weren't getting reads. Some of the meters were put in backwards.
When you say some, nearly half of the,
In other words, others had just been well past their useful life and had just stopped working.
Yeah, that's true too.
And so when we replaced the register, we'd get an accurate reading, but it could be for months.
Years.
So a person would get a bill, a very extremely large bill, and because that's faulty equipment on our part, we did adjustments for those. So that was some of the problem. The town's largest producing well has been inoperable since October. That's well number 6. So we had to increase the amount of water that we purchased this year. We had to replace 3 broken lift station pumps. And then in number 8, I just want to revisit this. The Water and Sewer Fund back in 2019-2020, the Water and Sewer Fund still owed $1.2 million in pledged contributions to capital projects. Those projects had been completed back in 2016 and 2017.
so that was an accounting error?
Yes. So we expensed out those contributions in 1920.
2020.
It was I think it was last
Oh,
year.
you're saying 2019,
Yes.
2020. I'm with you.
Yeah. So looking at the effects of COVID, we've had significant amount of time at this point to see what happened there. There was an 8% decrease in both residential and commercial usage as compared to the same time frame.
I can see the commercial being down because the businesses were closed, but I can't see the residential being down. Seemed like that would have went up with everybody at home.
Yeah, I mean, it
You
was
would think-
surprising.
You would think so.
That was a surprising finding.
Everybody was working from home, so they didn't shower.
Well, they talked about that documented on television, that people said, yeah, I wasn't showering as often. But you'd think they'd be using the commode more if you're at home all the time.
So we've got several issues. Number one, rate deficiencies. So the self-sufficiency and the solvency of the water and sewer fund, they've been in a decreasing state, looks like since 2013, 2014. If you look on page 78, that first graph, that shows you self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency measures the extent to which our charges that we're charging our customers actually cover our expenses. And you see pretty much every year, except for 1 year, we've been below the red line, which means our fees have not been sufficient to cover our costs. And in fact, you see 2018, where we're above the line. That might be true, but we had an extraordinarily good year that year. So, and also cash was overstated by $1.2 million in that year. So,
Exactly.
solvency,
So an accounting,
solvency, the same thing. You see the solvency, you want to be above the red line. Solvency addresses the fund's ability to meet long-term obligations. It looks at your available cash over your long-term liabilities. And we've been pretty much in a declining state since 2014. Historically low water rates compared to the expenses has contributed to the depletion of the unrestricted net assets. So you see the third graph there, that shows the balance of the unrestricted assets. Unrestricted assets are available cash that you have available for spending. And you see that's been in a steadily declining state since about 2013.
that was the 1.6 that was wiped out, right?
That's right. You see in 2017, you got a dip. It kind of bumps back up, but in that year, it's overstated there. Unrestricted assets are overstated by 1.2 million.
Well, what it boils down to is whoever's keeping the books and who interprets what.
Well, that wasn't really an interpretation. I mean, that just was a journal entry did not get done.
Well, there again, who's keeping the books?
So I think there was some turnover at that time.
It was a lot of turnover. It was not pointed out. I won't say it wasn't caught by auditors, but it was not pointed out. Is
I
that
think
accurate?
actually he did point it out because I found a memo and
then
there was just
And
turnover.
then nothing was done, so.
There just wasn't anybody in place at the time to do
Yeah.
it. I don't think it was anything malicious. It just didn't get done because there was nobody to do it. Looking at page 79, this is actually the dollar change in unrestricted assets. So that first graph shows the total balance. This shows you the dollar change. So anytime you're above the zero, that means you're adding money into your savings. Anytime the graph dips below, that means you're taking money out of your savings. And you see pretty much every year since about 2013, we've been using savings. So that's the first issue. The first issue is the rates not really being sufficient to cover your expenses. Second issue that we have, and it's a huge issue, we've got infiltration of stormwater in the sanitary sewer system. So the sharp increases in the sewer and sewer surcharges, particularly in just the recent months, have further strained the water and sewer fund's cash reserves. The cause for the steep increase is likely due to a high incidence of inflow and infiltration of stormwater into the sewer system. This is evidenced by the fact that the town is sending more wastewater in gallons to the city of Rocky Mount for treatment than we are billing to our own customers. So looking just as of the current year, as of March, the year-to-date number of gallons of sewage that the city of Rocky Mount has billed us for is 30% more than the gallons of sewage that we have billed to our customers. And so you see, looks like something happened. Once again, back in 2013, you see, I apologize, the yellow line's not showing very clear, and I do apologize for that. It looked a lot clearer. before I printed it on this paper. But you see that before 2013, the gallons sold and the gallons treated are right in line. But in 2013, they start to diverge. And it's been that way ever since. And I do find that interesting that back in 2013, 2014 is you can also see the difference in the unrestricted assets and the solvency and the self-sufficiency. It's just like something happened in that year, and it's just not been maintained. Both things have not been maintained since 2013. So that's item 2. And item 3 is aging infrastructure. So although the town has increased spending on capital assets in the water and sewer fund over the last 5 years, our assets in the water and sewer fund remain at or above 50% depreciated. So that's the 2 graphs on page 80. The first graph shows the net investment in capital assets. In other words, that blue column is the money that we've spent on capital, on assets, and on infrastructure. And you see we're spending more year by year on infrastructure, especially compared to our unrestricted net assets. So our cash, available cash, is decreasing. Our spending on assets is increasing. However, that second graph shows you the remaining useful life of your assets. Below the red line, that's 50%. So even though we've spent more money on assets, we're increasing our spending on assets, our remaining useful life of our assets has not increased really significantly above that 50% line. So the failing condition of the water and sewer fund's assets, including the failure of the town's largest producing well pump this year, 3 lift stations, and nearly half of our meter registers, has led to higher unforeseen maintenance costs and operating and billing inefficiencies during this year. So those are our main issues. And those are just the main broad categories. There are a lot of nuances and sub-issues combined within those. But we've got a pretty robust solution plan. So to ensure the long-term solvency of this fund, we've got to do 2 things. We've got to increase our revenues to cover the costs, and B, we've got to decrease the expenses resulting from failing infrastructure. So our proposed budget puts into action several things. Number 1, we're working with the City of Rocky Mount to address the factors that are contributing to the high surcharges. So a plan's been put in place to implement a commercial sewage pretreatment program and also a fats, oils, and greases program. So those things are aimed at reducing the amount of contaminants in the system. Number 2, we're going to have the asset inventory assessment completed. It's going to include the 10-year capital improvement plan, the GIS mapping of the system, and a water and sewer rate study. Okay? So that's going to help us identify major issues and put a plan into place what we need to do and in what order. Number 3, we've put into this budget increased funding for targeted system maintenance. Number 4, so last fiscal year, well, the current fiscal year that we're in, we included depreciation expense in the annual budget. So, however, I need to actually amend this. With the rates, even with the rate increases that we've proposed, we do not have the funds available to continue to do that. So we need to put an asterisk by this because this is a best practice that we need to make sure we're putting enough money away in our capital reserve fund for infrastructure improvements. So although we did it this year, we won't be able to do it next year. And so it's something in the foreseeable future we need to make sure we're getting back on line with that. Number 5, we're receiving the American Recovery Act funds, and we're going to put those into action as far as the infrastructure upgrades. We've got miscellaneous, various projects that we're going to complete with that. And number 6, we've got to increase the water and sewer rates to cover the costs. So we're not going to set them and forget them. We're going to do them. We're going to have a third-party rate study done, and we're going to review rates on an annual basis to make sure that our rates continue to cover costs and that we don't get in the same situation. Page 82 digs further into the rate assessment and how I arrived at those figures for the rate increases. So that first category, that first graph, tells you the assumptions that were used. These are our customer profiles. We've got commercial customers and residential customers, in-town and out-of-town customers. And for each of those categories, that third column tells you the average usage over a 12-month period. That fourth column tells you the number of customers in each of those categories. And finally, that last column tells you the number of zero usage bills that we send out. And that's important to know because a zero usage bill would still include the first 1,000 gallons. So it's got to be factored into the calculation. At the current rates, the current corrected rates, $23 being $23 for sewer base fee, you see that water revenue would be $1.2 million and sewer revenue would be $2.2 million. But if you compare that to our total costs, you see we've got a deficit in administrative revenue of $333,000, a deficit in water revenue of $16,000, and a deficit in sewer revenue of $681,000. So we calculated the minimum base fee by taking the deficit, the total deficit of the admin, which is at $333,000, and divide that by the total number of bills that you send out. So it's the 2,700 plus the 2,800, all of these numbers of customers, times 12 months. You take that 332,000 and you divide it by the total number of bills. And that's how you get that number. The water rate increase, so you take your water deficit, which is at 16,000, and you divide that by the total volume in thousands of gallons that you sell. Because that's the increase per 1,000 gallons that you need to implement. And you do the same process for sewer. You take your sewer deficit, which is at 681,000, you divide it by the total volume in 1,000 gallons. And that's the amount that you need to charge per 1,000 gallons to make up the deficit. So I also rounded up to the nearest 50 cents to give us a little bit of, to factor in, uncollectibles and other unknowns. And when I plugged in the new rates as are in the fee schedule, we're arriving at these new revenues. Total revenue 4.7. So when you subtract the total expenses, it gives you a surplus of 125,000. So these rates, as they are, based on these current assumptions, will generate enough revenue to cover the expenses, but it would not generate enough for a 5% contingency, and it would not generate enough for depreciation expense. So just keep that in mind. We are hopeful, though, that the plan of actions that we have in place as far as infrastructure improvements and billing will help us as far as getting the rate, sufficiently covering those additional costs as well. Looking at page 84, this is a comparison. We've already looked at this today, just to revisit it. I have one of my employees just take a survey of several cities that are similar size and similar location, just to see what they're charging. So, and you can see, and I apologize, but my red color didn't bleed over. But in the far right column, the operating margin, anything under 1 means that town or that municipality is not charging a rate high enough to cover their own costs.
Under 1.
Correct. So the first 3, and then you've got, several of them, almost about half of them here, are not charging rates high enough to cover their costs. And so that's the challenge that we face when we try to benchmark against our peers. It's very difficult to benchmark against the peers when they're not quite doing what they're supposed to be doing either. So where we were at previously for 4,000 gallons, which is about an average bill for a family of 4 or so, rates as they currently are that bill costs $92. With the increases, the new bill for the same amount of gallons is $108, excuse me. So that's a $16.11 increase.
$108.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
For 4,000 gallons.
for 4,000 gallons. So that gets you right at 1% margin, but it doesn't give you any extra.
So someone who was paying a $92 a month bill would be looking at a $108 a month bill.
Yes. So, I did include, it's on the next page, it's an article by the league and in
read
partnership
that.
with the DEQ. It's really good reading. It's pretty short. Some best practices that they included, just so you can have some framework. So usually utility systems with fewer users, which the town of Nashville is considered a small user, they tend to have higher fees because we have fewer customers to be able to spread out those fixed costs. Also, utility systems that are customers, wholesale customers of larger utility systems, which we are, also tend to have higher fees. So we are fitting both of those categories. And so our customers we can expect that our fees are going to be higher than usual, higher than average, just because of those two factors alone. And once again, just want to repeat it, the operating margin, it's a financial benchmark. It indicates whether your fees are either you're breaking even, or you're losing money, or you've got enough tucking away to cover your future costs. So an operating margin above 1 is where you need to be. And anything below 1, you're operating at a loss. And according to this article, about 54% of utility systems are actually generating enough revenue to cover their costs if you include depreciation. So that's a little over half are there. That means the other half are not there. And so that's definitely one of those factors that are contributing to all those distressed systems that are in the state at this time. So looking at the best practices that have been included in the article, you want to include depreciation. We're not doing that at this time. We were doing it. We just simply don't have the funds at this time to do that. Update rates regularly to ensure that your revenues are sufficient to cover your expenses and also to avoid these drastic one-time rate spikes. So this is something we'll be doing in the future. Charge higher rates for out-of-town customers to account for the added mileage of infrastructure. So we are doing that. Perform the planned infrastructure maintenance, improvements, and replacements to maintain the health of the system and avoid preventable operating costs. So we now have a system in place for that. Implement a commercial pre-treatment program for wastewater, contaminants, and a fats, oils, and greases program to reduce sewer surcharges. So we will be also doing that as well. Any questions or comments just about that section?
So the average customer can look at $18 plus the $1.87 for waste. So that's
$16.11 for 4,000 gallons.
Okay. But then $2 more for waste.
Yes.
I think you went into a lot of detail here to explain the situation we're facing, Sam, which I appreciate that very much. And I know it's a difficult thing for citizens to deal with any increases, but I don't see us having any choice. We need to get our system to a point of maintaining solvency. This sounds like a plan of action to get us there and to keep us on track so that we can remain there in future years. I appreciate all the work you put into coming up with this, you and Randy, with this plan of action, because it's not just obviously it's not a single factor. It's multiple things that have impacted us and brought us to this point. And just as you pointed out with the solutions, I think it's going to be a multi-factor approach to getting us back where we want to be with things.
And I'm not an accountant, but I understood it the way you presented it, so I was very appreciative of that. As I read it and studied it, I understood where we were coming from, where we had to go.
Well, the work here is not done. We've got to continue to be vigilant, and as we receive new information, we'll keep you updated.
What can we count on next year? I mean, citizens are going to say, are we going to have another increase next year?
Well, we hope not. We hope not to have another spike like this. We were going to get a third-party rate assessment done. We probably should follow the guidance that's provided to us. But that 10-year improvement plan, hopefully we can get some good, solid direction as far as what needs to be done.
And some understanding about the readings.
If we find any major issues, we may want to issue some debt to get those taken care of.
Because they're probably costing us money once we find them.
Because we would not be able to pay cash for those things.
Now, what are you talking about now?
Well, say we televise the fallout line, and we find out there are 3 manholes out there that at the base or bottom, they're just leaking like a sieve. We need to get them buttoned up right away, because
But that will save the citizens money.
it will.
Doing things like that.
Just from perspective, a $2 million project, over, I think, 20 years or so, I think is what I calculated, is an $80,000 debt payment. But if you can reduce your sewer costs, then you've
You can
done
pay
a good
it.
job. You've made a good choice.
Well, people are going to say, well, how did you get to this point? Everything.
Looking back at all these graphs, it's evident to me that something happened back in 2013, 2014, where the things just start to really go out of control. And it's been that way since then.
Then it's been a combination of a lot of things feeding into that factor as well that's created the situation. Part of it being with the sewer surcharges and the meter, it's not registering everything accurately when we have those huge rainfalls. But the things that we've got in place are going to help us remedy that at least. And I'm hopeful that next year what we'll see is some of those exorbitant charges that we've been hit with coming down dramatically to help kind of position us better in future years. So
That's definitely the goal.
Did you say slip line and point repair over a 5-year period? That's what you guys have projected, do a section. Yeah. So over a 5-year period, I think in 5 years, if we continue just, implement the plan, slip lining and point repair every year, in the next, 5 years, it's going to continue to decline.
Find them, seal them up. Find them, seal them up.
But citizens can't hope to see their water rates come down. In other words, they will never come down. They will at least stay where they are or go up. If we make improvements.
For us to continue to maintain the system, that's probably true. I suppose there could be a situation where things just got dramatically better and we might be able to do something, but
maybe in the sewer fund, in the sewer side, on the sewer side, because that's where
that's where most of the expense is. Yeah.
Bleeding edge.
But then again, we're a customer of Rocky Mountain. We're completely at their mercy.
True.
As far as what they charge, and so it's very little control that we have over there.
Can we get a grant to build our own system?
Well, they don't recommend that.
I know. Bigger is better.
And I don't know what's out there now. It used to be that the state, through the Clean Water Trust Fund and different things, had some pretty significant grant dollars available. May not be anything out there at the time, or even some 0 to very low interest loans. If we find ourselves in that situation where we're needing something for a major upgrade because of some of the issues that we determine, at least be aware of the possibility that maybe there's some grant dollars to be had somewhere.
Yeah. I thought the infrastructure plan, the federal infrastructure, hasn't passed, I don't think, but I thought that there were some major allocations in there for water and sewer.
They are major.
Yeah.
But
that's a big if at this point.
And the legislature itself for North Carolina is considering doing their own, regardless of federal, knowing that there are these systems out there.
Well, it's everywhere. It's not just here. This is an issue globally, because all of these systems, everywhere were put in place, 50, 100 years ago. And now they're all coming to this point.
But we've got to explain this to the citizens of our town. And I don't know if,
Well,
I
we'll
mean-
write the script and we'll let you guys,
Yeah,
I
we should
mean,
definitely.
a lot of what
give
we
it a
just
review.
covered is explanation. And I agree with you, Louise. It is a difficult thing to try to explain because the average person's just seeing my bills going up.
Yeah.
With the rate increases that you've got slated for the coming year, didn't you just say that at the end of this fiscal year that we should be above what we need?
that's the goal.
Right at one.
just slightly.
Right at
Just slightly,
barely. I mean, that's if
125,000
everything goes
extra.
well.
125,000 extra,
If everything happens.
if everything falls into place.
And we don't have any more emergence.
Well, we don't have a cushion.
No.
No, we don't.
We've used it.
And then before we had a cushion, now we have no cushion. And that,
And thank God we had that cushion because
exactly.
we would have.
That's why I say in our general fund balance, that's why the cushion is so important, because you never know what's out there.
I mean, just looking back at some of the other, what other towns are doing, I mean, right, many of them are above $100. I mean, even at the 108, we're still not the highest. Not only are we not the highest, but, we're solvent with that number, or at least we're self-sufficient with that number. And then others, as you see, they may have lower rates, but they're not self-sufficient.
They're going to run out of reserves too, just like we did.
So,
If they're not there already, they will.
It's not a fun reality.
okay. Page 101 is the debt summary. This is just a summary of the total amounts of all the debts that we have. We don't have very many debts. 2 in the general fund, 1 for the garbage truck, and there's 1 proposed debt for the streets and sidewalk. I think there's a little error here in I think my principal and my interest paid is incorrect. The total is only $400, so I'll need to correct that.
400,000.
Yep. Looks like that might have happened in this general fund for the garbage truck, because I think that loan was only $310 too.
Oh, okay.
Apologize for that.
Okay, so what number? I'm not,
So it needs to subtract
Yeah, so
interest
the
payment.
principal paid, looks like that number actually includes the principal and interest in the garbage truck and the street and sidewalk. The stormwater drainage project, that Windy Oak drainage project, looks like it's going to be $307,000. It's going to be a 0%, just an interest-free loan from the general fund to the stormwater fund. That would be paid back over an 8-year period of time. Water and sewer, we still have one more CFE payment for 21-22, and then we'll be completely done with that. I don't know why that says 16. The total of it was $69,300, so we've just got 1 payment left.
so now we have that fine generator
It's actually a pump.
pump.
Yeah.
Can we use it for other things?
We've been using it since it left the Elm Street lift station location. It went from there straight out to the prison, and it helped us for several years out there as a backup until last year when we got that lift station rebuilt. So the guys were able to bring it back in. But now that lift station out there is hard plumbed. So if we ever have to take it back there, it's just a quick coupler here, plug in the floats, start it up, and it's good.
So the fact that CFE is out of business, that doesn't disrupt this loan.
Maybe it should. What are you thinking, Louise?
I'm just thinking.
It's our,
I didn't know whether they were going to
Infrastructure.
call it in.
we own the infrastructure, and they fronted the cash. So,
Are there any nibblings for companies that might be looking at that facility?
There are. The general manager out there at Universal Leaf said they've had 3 prospects look at it since CFE closed, and I heard that from Andy Haig too.
And I heard that
It's
out of
really
those,
large.
I heard that out of those 3 that looked at it said it was entirely
Too big.
2 of them said it was entirely too big for what they needed.
190,000 square feet.
That's a lot of room.
A lot of roof.
That's a lot.
Do you remember when we toured out there?
Mhm.
I mean, It was huge.
Went on forever.
Yeah. And I kept looking for the sweet potatoes. I didn't see it.
And we didn't find any.
That should have told me something.
I remember it well.
I just hope that, and believe we'll find something to go out there.
Something will come in.
Yeah, something, sometime.
Just a tough time right now.
And it's a very specialized facility, too.
Yeah.
Very specialized.
On page 102, we've included a 5-year plan. So this is something that's new. In the budgets that I've read from the past, years past, I've not seen one of these included. This is something that we're going to continue with, and this piece of this is the first year. This piece will just hopefully get better and better as we get better at planning and we get more information. So I want to just kind of read this along here. So the long-term financial planning, it's fundamental to understanding your fiscal vitality and your feasibility. So we can't just look at this year as it's siloed one year, separate from all of the years. You know, we've got to have a roadmap of where we're going. So it provides a future roadmap. It identifies areas of opportunity and risk. It guides policy discussion and prioritization. Develops fiscal policy and budgetary framework. Benchmarking and improving services. And hopefully it positively impacts the financial health and the growth of the town. All right, so we've compiled a 5-year plan. We've got several things that are included in this plan. First of all, we've got a personnel forecast, a public buildings improvement plan, vehicles and equipment replacement schedule, IT service contract forecast, streets and sidewalk improvement plan, debt service schedule, and a capital improvement plan. So those are the seven sub-plans that are included in this master 5-year plan. All right? So we included guidance from third-party professionals, consultants, peer benchmarking, and scholarly publications. So we've included a cost increase due to inflation. We're just assuming that's going to be 1% annually. In water and sewer fund, the charges for water, sewer, and sewer surcharges right now are assumed at this time to be 0. We hope that those things will decrease and not increase. Now, if we have natural growth in the town, those would grow, in coordination with that. But some of these things, we're hoping to see some decreases. So at this time, it's budgeted at 0% change. Okay? So we've got some assumptions when it comes to the revenues, how we forecast the revenues. Property taxes are forecasted with a 3% growth every year. So we know of some development projects that are in process in town. We've included those figures in here as well. During the reval year, we included a 5% increase in valuation. Sales tax revenue is forecasted with a 3% growth every year. Franchise taxes are forecasted with a 1% annual decrease. Motor vehicle taxes are forecasted with a 1% annual growth. Fire tax is forecasted with a 3% annual growth. And water and sewer revenues are forecasted with a 3% annual growth, and that's based on a natural growth rate. Not fee increases, just a natural growth rate. All right. So the expenditure and revenue forecasts, we summarize all of those 5-year plans. So I actually want to stop there and go to the plans before I continue on with the order. All right. Page 106 is a summary of all of the property tax revenues from developments and when those are expected to come online. So we used, you see you've got 7 projects that we know of at this time, the scope, and the estimated taxable value, and how many units per year will come online. So you see years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, those bottom line numbers, that 58,000, the 64,000, the 220,000, and so on and so forth. Those are the numbers that were added to the property tax valuation. That's the projected increase in revenues from those developments. If all goes well, and they come online when they say they're going to.
And they don't all come online at the same time. I'm talking about it's usually multi-year Build out.
Phase out. Yep. On page 107, our personnel outlook. So we assumed an annual cost increase of 2%. That's COLA, that includes retirement increases and insurance increases. We also included a market salary study increase in the amount, I think I put in 10%, for non-public safety employees for fiscal year 22-23. So that's built into this projection.
Sam, does that include maybe for some departments additional personnel, or is that assuming a steady?
I believe for police and fire, we've added 3 positions, one next year, one the following year, and the one year after. I can't remember, but I think so. I think it includes 3 additional positions in police, one added each year, not all online at the same time. And then I believe in the fire department, 3 of them go online next year because of the fire station too. But those are the only positions that are added.
Looks like maybe the library had one additional full-time, go from 239 to 323.
I'll take a look at that. I don't think so. I don't think I added another position in there. Oh, no, it's because of the salary study, because they're non-public safety.
Okay,
That's why. That's why the high increase in that one.
from 22 to FY23, yeah.
And also, just pointing out, so both the police and fire they've applied for some grants that would cover some positions. So if they were to receive the grants, we would get the additional positions, but we wouldn't have to pay the actual cost until the grant expires. So that would change those numbers. But eventually, those costs would be added in. Looking at page 108, this is our public buildings 5-year improvement plan. I think this document will just get better and better as we go. This is kind of a precursory plan. You see, per each building, we're looking at roofing, HVAC, parking lot repairs, lighting and generator, facade and landscaping, interior or miscellaneous upgrades, and then IT hardware. So those are the categories that we're looking at for each building. And so I plugged in the numbers there, and then you can see the assumptions. So, for example, in Town Hall, in fiscal year 22-23, $20,000 is needed for a roofing improvement, and that is per that vendor assessment. We had a vendor come in and give us an assessment. HVAC, 2 units will need to be replaced, and HVAC, they have 2 units, and those are in disrepair and need to be replaced in 24-25. And so on and so forth.
When are we going to do the parking lot out here?
It's supposed to be done before this fiscal year begins.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, because you don't know where to park. You can't see the lines.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to paint them until we
Right.
microsurface
Right.
it.
Are we going to take it all the way over?
We're not planning on it, but I have talked to Cliff Joyner, and he's gotten a hold of John Rich with Weaver Asphalt, and I think he's made arrangements to have his done too when Weaver gets here to do ours.
So go all the way to the wall.
Yeah.
But we're dedicating a person, an employee, to public buildings now. What I would like to see, in the upcoming year is more of a fleshed out, fully comprehensive plan in place here. So,
Is that
With
the
real,
person
like-
from the cemetery?
yes, so that person will be in charge of, facilitating those projects.
Plus cemetery? Or not?
Well, he'll be on call at the cemetery, but other than that, he won't. I mean, Coy's going to be our cemetery administrator if you guys approve this budget. And then Kim is going to be in charge of the grounds with 2 of Coy's part-time recreation people.
McCoy is going to be the cemetery administrator, so all purchases and stuff will go through him?
There aren't a whole lot of cemetery purchases, but yes,
Okay.
you know,
We're probably going to still be, the finance office is probably going to still be
Yeah.
heavily
I don't
involved in
think
that. yes.
anybody, I think it's going to be
Well,
doing
wait a
too
minute,
much
this could
recreation.
get really muddled. Okay, if somebody wants to buy a plot, they'd still come to town hall and purchase it. They would not go to the recreation.
No,
Okay,
they're,
okay.
they're going to be in charge of just the maintenance piece of it.
Okay.
It's kind of how it is now, like Public Works is in charge of the maintenance, finance is in charge of the administration of it, and that's how it's going to remain, except for, instead of Public Works, it'll be under a cemetery for recreation. As far as mowing and that sort of stuff.
We just want to make sure it's maintained.
oh, it'll be maintained. Kim's assured us, you know, give me 2 part-timers and step back, you won't recognize the place back.
I was, wait a second, don't put this in. I was just telling him, park and recs, how many people out there have recreation?
I know, when I read that too, I thought, here we go.
So that
Sorry.
person, so he'll be mowing at the cemetery, but also he'll be mowing at the parks too. Like him and some of the part-time staff that are already there in Parks and Rec will be also mowing, you know, they're already mowing at the park, but now they're going to be helping mow at the cemetery. So it just kind of falls better in line with what they're already doing.
We think so.
Which brings me to Chris. Where is Chris going?
He's going to be in charge of light bulbs and furnace filters and making sure carpets get cleaned and outlets work and anything and everything that has anything to do with our buildings and
The
facilities.
building maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Make sure the parking lot stays striped and the landscaping out front gets trimmed and has pine straw and mulch put with it.
And that new title is there a title to this?
I guess
It's in there.
Building, what was it?
Building-
I saw it.
His new title will be
Building maintenance supervisor?
Facilities Maintenance Tech.
Yeah.
3.
Facilities maintenance tech.
He's got the skill set for that. He really does.
He's talented.
He's going to also assist with other things, other public works things as needed, streets and things like that. So I would like to see, like I say, I would like to see this plan. These are just things that we know of now, but I would like to see this, you know, improve for future years. $110 is our vehicle and equipment 5-year replacement plan. And these are just based on, we already kind of had one in place. This kind of just copies that and updates it and refreshes it.
They still aren't able to get police cars, are they? Don't they have to get SUVs?
Getting SUVs.
And
pickups.
SUV will run you, what, 40?
Well, we're figuring 155 per vehicle, upfitted. Is that correct, Sam?
No.
Is that what you're asking, Louise?
55 is what I think.
Oh, I'm
50
sorry.
or 55.
55. That's what I was thinking. I
Thought you
think
said
155.
155.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
All
it's
together.
55.
I
One-
had,
one-
It's going to have diamonds and furs.
When the world we get?
Self-driving.
see, I was at a stripper for 40.
And it includes the radio and everything, all the equipment that goes in there. And so probably this vehicle and equipment replacement plan would probably be, these are just kind of known things, and it's been refreshed, but I think this is going to probably change every year.
So I sense that we held back on vehicles this year, according to the wants and the needs.
Yes.
The wants are always,
I mean, we did an assessment, and that was included in that retreat packet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, over half of the vehicles, I mean, are extremely aged. Now, that doesn't mean that they necessarily need to be replaced, but it's something to consider. You know, if we don't maintain a steady replacement, you know, they're all going to come due
One
once.
time.
well, that's why we did the 3. You know, we used to do 2 a year, and then we went to 3 a year. So 3 a year doesn't hack it. I'm talking about police
For
vehicles.
police, well, theirs is probably in the best shape of everybody's.
Well, that
Works.
fire department is pretty good too.
Yeah.
Public Works is where they are repurposing signs
Yeah.
for floorboards.
Yeah.
That's resourceful.
Keeps from driving a Flintstone car.
On page 112 is our IT contract. It just assumes a 3% increase year by year. However, I believe in 23-24, that contract is due for rebid. So we would definitely do that. One 13 is the 5-year debt outlook. This just shows you the total of the payments over the next 5 years. And that includes the payments for the street and sidewalk improvements. However, so this payment is assumed to be a 15-year loan at 3.5%. But that was assumed that the street improvements would last 20 years. But Randy, if you're saying they're going to last only 8 to 10 years, that slurry seal, we probably need to revisit that.
But it's not as expensive as I was thinking. Yeah.
And reduce
Good
the
news,
loan
bad news.
to a lesser term. Because you don't want to take out a 15-year loan on an improvement that only lasts 8 years.
When we started using it, that was what they told us. They said, okay, just know. I can remember asking DOT about it, and they said it's used for parking lots and aesthetics.
And low traveled streets. Yeah.
In other words,
The micro seal stuff. But an asphalt overlay, hopefully you get 12 to 15 out of that, but a lot of that depends on your base. If you're putting it on something that's all busted up and alligator, you're not going to get that kind of life out of it either.
So one way or the other, we would not issue a loan with a term that's longer than the useful life of that. So that 15-year assumption is probably too long. So that number is probably going to change. $114 is the capital reserve funds. It's got both funds, general and enterprise fund. As of the end of June of 2021, in the general fund, we'll have $674,000. The highlighted yellows, those are monies that are taken out and being reallocated. So I don't want that to confuse you. It's just money that we're moving. So in 2021-22, we're purchasing $290,000, not the $455. We're moving $125,000 in. And at the end, we'll have $509,000.
The far right column in the middle of the page.
that's why it takes time to study this. That's why when we get this, we need to have time to really go through and study it ourselves before we come to these meetings, because otherwise we're just fishing around.
Well, these are, on the far left, you see the projects and the items that these funds are allocated to as well. And so these are subject to change, based on council's priorities. And in the enterprise fund, the same. The yellow columns, those are monies that are being reallocated. But we're actually not moving any money into that fund this year, or for next year. But we will use $40,000 of it. It's going to leave us with a $394,000 balance. So all of those plans, those 5-year plans, roll up into a summarized 5-year plan. That's on the bottom of, it starts on the bottom of page 102. You just plug in all your numbers and your 5-year plans. You get a dollar change in spending. Now, this is not an all-inclusive, comprehensive dollar change in spending. These are just your dollar changes in your spending from these large categories that you can reasonably predict. It doesn't include everything. So you've got a dollar change in spending. And then the second column, the second graph, is your revenues. So you plug in all your assumptions for your revenues, your major revenues, property taxes, sales tax, and so on. So then you get your dollar changes in your revenues. So now we know how our expenses are going to increase and how our revenues are going to increase or decrease year by year. We look at our current fund balance appropriation. So this year, for fiscal year 21-22, we're having to use $661,000 balance the budget. That's that $661,000. You put in your dollar change in expenditures. So you take how much you're having to you already appropriated. You add in your increases in expenditures. You take out your increases in revenues. And that gets you your projected number for what your fund balance appropriation is going to look like for the year after. Does everybody understand?
What page are you on?
I'm on page 103, the middle graph.
Okay, that's where I am.
Same as that first fiscal year in the title column, is that correct?
No, yes, it's correct. So I'm looking at 22-23.
Okay.
So 21-22's fund balance appropriation was $661,000.
So you carry that over to the beginning of the next
In
year.
22-23, your increase in expenditure is $7,900. But your increase in revenues to offset your expenditures is $219,000. So in that year, you can expect that your fund balance appropriation will be $450, not $661. Now, like I said, we've got lots of assumptions built in here, but this is just a forecast so we know where we're going. Okay? And we just do that all the way through the next 5 years. Okay? And we did the same thing with the enterprise fund. We plugged in the numbers for our expenses. We plugged in the numbers for our revenues, assuming that 3% natural growth. And then on page 104, that second graph there, which I apologize, I really should never use white font in a yellow column, so I would never do that again. I apologize. You take your current
Please
net
don't.
asset appropriation. I know.
You
Can't
can
really
you
see
see
that
with
at
the
all.
magnifying glass.
So you see the current net asset appropriation is 187. So that's what we're going to save in 21-22. That's what we're putting in. We've got a dollar change in expenses of $219,000. You've got a dollar change in revenues of 136. So then the next, for 22-23, the savings that is going to go into your net assets is 104,000, and you just carry that on over. So what you see. So I'll just wait and say that. So looking at streets and sidewalks. So we've updated what we're doing with streets and sidewalks. We're going to implement a plan. It's a very aggressive plan, trying to get these streets all resurfaced within 8 years. Based on the current cost of 75 cents per square foot for streets and $15 per square foot sidewalks. Okay? We know that we have 28 miles of streets. And we know we have 15 miles of sidewalks. We are assuming that costs are going to increase by 1% year by year. So based on those cost assumptions, we are estimating this is the number of miles that we're going to be able to improve in both streets and sidewalks year by year using this amount of money. So I've got a longer graph, and I should give that to you. It's going to be a piece of paper that's about this big that goes all the way out. But based on these current assumptions, you get done in 8 years. I'm kind of thinking conservatively, it's probably going to be more like 10 years. Based on, we've already, gotten one quote that's higher than $350,000. Okay? So, we also did the same thing for the PAL fund debt. Each year we add a loan in the amount of $400,000, and we use the PAL funds to service the debt. On page 105, you see that last column where there's money in there, the ending PAL fund balance, based on the loan payments and the PAL funds that we're getting from the state every year. Okay? So that's how you do the 5-year plan, but I want to move now to the fund balance projections, because the fund balance projections, based on all of the 5-year plans, this is what the fund balances are going to look like. like I say, we've got a lot of hefty assumptions that are built into this.
Page 115.
So you see in the general fund, fund balance is decreasing year by year because our revenues are just not, based on the current assumption models, our revenues are not enough to cover the increased expenses. Okay? So in 22, 23, and going on, they're starting to dip quite low. So unless we have some additional grants, funds, or other, things of that nature, we need to come up with a difference here. MSD funds, we've got a high balance in 1920, but we're going to use some of that, and we're going to just move forward with that. PAL funds, right now you can see our fund balances the PAL fund balance is increasing because our debt payments we're receiving more money from the state over the next 5 years than we're going to be paying out in debt. Water and sewer, fiscal year 2021, the fund balance is going to be $335,000. We're bumping it up, but in fiscal year 24-25, when you add depreciation costs back in there, and I apologize, you guys can see the number, you go in the red. So that's statutorily not allowed. We can't do that. Well, you can do it, but it's highly frowned upon. So you run out of money in 25-26, unless we can get a handle on the costs in the sewer fund or improve our revenues. You're still operating at a deficit.
What is the recommended amount that towns should keep in their fund balance, or is there one?
There's a percentage.
What is that?
The minimum is 8%.
8%. It's the minimum.
Smaller towns usually have higher fund balances, around 100 or 100% or more.
Or 90 days supply. Right.
Well, usually they like to have a year.
A year?
For smaller towns, yes, because the volatility hits a small town harder.
Exactly, and I was always told 6 months. You better have 6 months in reserves to be able to
Continue to operate.
exactly, without any help from anybody.
Lynn, what's been your experience?
I agree with what Sam's saying. I think in smaller towns, you definitely want it on the higher end so that you are any kind of catastrophe or something that would happen. The 8% was just the bare bones minimum.
Right.
That's basically just 1 month's worth of working capital. So that would not be appropriate. I would think we would want to stay 70% or higher.
Yeah.
And 70% on the lower side. I would think whatever we can do to get it up higher.
Why is it coming down to in 22, 23 to around 4 million?
Because year by year, we're appropriate, based on the 5-year plan and the assumptions, you see that we're appropriating fund balance every year to balance the budget. And eventually you appropriate all your fund balance, your total fund balance is declining year by year.
But now, this will not take into account those years where our revenues exceed our projections and our expenditures are below. Is that true, Sam?
Correct. And if you look further down on page 115, so just to read this, so based on the current assumptions, the growth in revenue would not be sufficient to cover the expenses, so you would have to appropriate fund balance year by year. Or, you would have to seek additional revenue sources such as grants, fee increases, tax increase, or donations. Or you would need to somehow reduce your expenditure. So at this time, the town is actively engaged in seeking grant funding. So we've already submitted several applications for grants, police, fire, library, recreation, and economic development projects. So we've got several grant applications in. So we're hopeful that some grant funds are going to reduce the burden on fund
Well,
balance.
it's also about living within your means. You know what's coming in and you budget accordingly.
And that's where these 5-year projections or forecasts are
And
nice
that way
to
you don't
look
have
at.
to dip into fund balance for everything.
And
the
each
town-
year, these numbers will be adjusted. As we move forward each year, there'll be new calculations that bear out where we're headed.
So the town has a history of conservative budgeting and conservative spending. So since 2011, which I provided the graph for you, the town has spent much less fund balance than appropriated. So basically, where our revenues are always coming in higher than we're projecting, and our expenditures are coming in lower. Every year here. Can y'all see the graph well that I was able to provide to update? Okay, good. The yellow is the actual fund balance we use. And you see that right many years we're actually adding, we've appropriated that we're going to use fund balance, and we ended up putting money in to fund balance. So we've got a lot of kind of negative doom and gloom assumptions here, but the reality is historically, we've never, not in one single year, have we used nearly what the fund balance we've said we were going to use.
What about this year?
No, we have not. So we've appropriated $400,000. I think we're going to put $100,000 in the bank.
Okay, what about next year?
We've got $660,000 appropriated.
That's a lot.
So
But if history is true, we won't spend that.
right.
Correct.
And the projections that you're using going out these years, of course, is taking an ultra-conservative view,
Correct.
because you're assuming that everything you have appropriated, you're going to spend, and that your revenues are either going to come at budget or below. So that's the reason these numbers. But it gives us a good picture, so we know going forward that would be a potential. But we can revise this as we move forward into those years, seeing what our actual revenues come to be, what our expenditures are, and there'll be some adjustments. So that my hope would be that by the time we got out to year 25, 26, where you're seeing 2.9 million, it would be higher than that simply because of those factors we just mentioned.
Yeah.
And as we plan, as the years go by, we get better at this process.
Sure. You'll have more experience seeing how it's all.
Good data.
I would hope that we would never spend it out like that. I mean, I'm hoping that, you know,
But I think from a conservative standpoint and looking at a 5-year plan, it's good to look at it from this vantage point rather
Yeah.
than overestimate and say, oh, we're going to end up with 6 million, and then we don't. We end up with 4.
which underscores the fact that we have to live within our means. We can't live beyond what's coming in.
That's true. But the 5-year plan does take into account, just pretty much unavoidable costs. I mean, you got to maintain your buildings and replace vehicles. Personnel costs are.
And then we had bizarre things like we've got to fix out at where's that wind,
Windy Oak.
and then we've got to fix that $50,000 place out here. So
We're
we
going to get well number 6 back online.
right. So we've had a lot of stuff that's just sort of aged out or messed up. So we don't have an option for some things.
Yeah, I mean, that's this year is a great example. Just because we didn't budget expenditure didn't mean we didn't realize it. We certainly did. We didn't budget to replace any lift station pumps, and we had to spend about $18,000 doing 3 of them.
Yeah. Page 116, just the top shows you our actual fund balance, our unassigned fund balance as a percent of the expenditures. That's that percentage that everybody likes to earmark against. At the end of 2021, it's going to be close to 81%. If we used all $661,000 of fund balance next year, it would be closer to 61%. So looking at the same thing for water and sewer fund, at this time we just have so many uncertainties as far as how our planned improvements, how our infrastructure upgrades, how our sewer costs are going to go. But based on the assumptions that we've got built in, we're still looking at some deficits in the future. And that's
Where you at?
it. And then 117 begins the line item budget. And I actually have an updated copy of the revenue because I just noticed this morning that my account number's cut off.
Yes.
So I was looking for a number and then I couldn't find it because I didn't have an account number. So I apologize for that. Did I only print one? No, I only printed one. Oh no.
You want to print one of these?
I thought this whole packet was that, so I'm going to have to, well,
Go to the library and
I
print
can
one.
take it to the library.
yeah. Do you mind? Here. Hold on. Okay.
And Sam, they also need headers for the expenditures.
Does that have a header on that one?
Every
Each page? It should have one. Yes. Okay.
Because there's no, there's
I had to reprint that, those graphs like 4 or 5 times. I had serious problems with the printer, and it smudged. You couldn't read a single number. Every time I printed, it was like another problem with it. So, hope to, before this budget year is over, get it right. Get a good looking document here.
So you kill a bunch of trees.
Well, they make paper thinner now, so a tree goes further.
Oh, do they? Okay.
So how many trees on Main Street are coming down?
15 of the 36.
Let me tell you, we better run for the hills.
Has this been run by the tree committee?
It has. They've
Stay.
reluctantly agreed to it. And one member who had some second thoughts, but all it takes is one of them big trees to come down on somebody pass underneath and get crushed, and we all have regret.
And the ones that have fallen are totally hollow on the inside on Main Street.
But you don't know by look.
No,
I mean, I was
no,
surprised when
no.
they fell over. Holy cow, that old thing's
I
hollow.
know.
It's going to change the character of Main Street.
It'll look different. But there's already, the tree board's already come up with recommendations on what types of trees to plant in the replacement and how many.
Good.
And they're excited about that opportunity. So I guess I'm thankful that the town doesn't have to incur that expense because, you're probably looking at $2,500 a tree
At
at their
least.
size.
They're going to bring them for us in just a few minutes.
Have the
Make
residents
copies.
on Washington Street been?
They haven't gotten their letters yet. They just went out yesterday. So they should get them tomorrow or the day after. And that'll correspond with, Joanne's running an article in the graphic that comes out Thursday about that too. So
I think it was 2014 when Duke Power went around cutting trees. Do you remember that, Larry?
we'll make
And
friends.
people went crazy.
Yep, had a fit.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering if,
And I would imagine most of those were right-of-way trees.
oh, they were.
Yeah.
Well, it started with the one on Cooley Corner falling across the street, almost hitting that guy going up under there. And then they raised their head up and started taking some of them down. Because it was a huge tree on the corner.
Some of them are probably about 100 years old.
Yeah.
And I would say they have to be. Been there a long time.
And we would like for them to stay, but we certainly don't want somebody to get killed by a fallen tree. And isn't that what the state recommended, that we take them down?
The state didn't we had that tree arborist
Right, that's what I mean.
do
And
it.
then the
And
state,
then presented that to the DOT, and they're like, well, let's do it quick. We got a little money left over. Let's get them out of there. So they plan on taking them down before the end of June.
Ooh. There's going to be some mad people in this town.
Doretha Johnson's calling you.
We're going to cut the trees down, and we're going to raise the rates. Man, I'm going to have to move out of town.
Or better yet, yeah.
I'm going to Kevin, and I ain't coming back.
Sometimes you feel like that. Man, it's peaceful here. I'm going to stay.
I'm glad to see us appropriating some of the MSD monies now. It's been concerned me that we were accumulating that tax revenue, and now
not using it.
now I'm glad to see us.
Yeah, the Downtown Strong came up with some good ideas
Yeah.
there. Two of those facades downtown are in the process of being redone right now, and it probably would be fair and prudent to, this isn't going to happen until this budget starts July 1st, to go back and say, do you guys want to be in line for this? I don't know how you guys feel about that, but if they just got done and we put it in place, they're probably going to be, hey, nobody told me about it. How come I'm...
Possibility. did we ever figure out why they've got the cones in the county, the courthouse parking lot? That we
Yeah,
came back?
Jonathan just sent me something on that.
You said about putting the signs up.
Is that what it was? Didn't sign?
You want to just see if we can go down, or did you want to wait for the copy? What do you guys want to do?
Well, we can use the old ones. The only thing missing is the account numbers, right? On the revenue.
We're not going to go line item by line item, are we?
Whatever you guys want to do.
I'm fine with us taking it home and me going through, and anything that I got specific questions, if we need to come back for another.
Well, did you guys want to go back to what page it was when you were putting question marks and circles around maybes? And just review those quick? Not to make any decision right now about them, but just to review them once again.
My one thing that I questioned, Randy, back, this is back at the beginning, is the farmers market. And I was just wondering if maybe we could get help from the county, or from, I saw where you had sent the information to our representative.
Yeah, I got something from Lisa today, too. What did it say?
But I want us to get that place and get it going as soon as possible, and I'd rather see our money working some way on the parking lot than putting all that money.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of phone calls about the $1,700. Nobody wants that. I mean, $1,700 a month leasing a building that we have no idea that the thing is going to fly. And in light of all these...
I've gotten some calls where people are excited about it, but that expense. But I hadn't got any calls from anybody about the expense. I hadn't gotten any about that.
Lisa is available tomorrow morning before noon or Thursday afternoon. Either time works. Just let me know.
And that's when?
Tomorrow.
You said who? Lisa?
Lisa Barnes. Brenda and I were going to meet with Lisa Barnes to see if she's got any ideas on a funding source for the farmers market.
Okay, all right.
So that's the 19th.
If we could like get a 2-year demonstration grant to give it a trial run here.
I'm available tomorrow morning.
So, a little story on Zebulon. They're on their third location. When they started there 7 or 8 years ago, it moved. And now they're on their third location. I think it's finally found a final home, from what we were told by Maureen Brown, who is the Rocky Mountain Mills farmers market manager. She started out in Zebulon, got theirs up and going.
Yeah, are they in the park now? Or where are they?
They're somewhere downtown.
Somewhere downtown.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Zebulon at all.
I had a concern about the recreation figures. 367,000. We were back where we were in the very beginning when we started breaking it down. We've gone back to where we
Well,
were.
probably be good to have Coy at your next budget meeting to give an overview. Everything that he's got proposed in there.
Well, I can understand what he's got proposed, but I just,
Still no savings to the
we broke
bank.
it down because of a savings factor.
Yeah.
And now we're right back where we started, or even higher. That was my concern. We did it for savings. Now we did it for 1 year. Now we got right back where we were.
Well, we're reallocating it to other programming. So we're not doing athletic programming. So
All we did was renamed it. Got different
Well, it's
name.
different.
we've
It's
partnered.
different stuff, yeah.
That's right. So he's got other programming proposed. And he's got
I mean,
lots of ideas.
Well, there's 45,000 in professional services. I assume that's for the study.
Yes, 42,000
Yeah,
of that.
see, that's for that study. That's a one-time thing. Once we get that, we can
we
get
got to
some
get
grants.
We got to get that done to
Right.
get grants.
Oh, when is our next budget meeting?
A week from today.
Next Tuesday.
Oh, I've got it right
Couldn't find a
there.
whole bunch, that's what took so long.
Oh.
Oh, you still didn't find one? What did-
Did not find a whole bunch. That's just one pack there.
Thank you.
And you can't copy holes.
Okay.
Pretty close.
We used to buy 3-hole paper to put in
Thank
the
you.
copier.
Uh-huh, you're
And I
Yeah.
would forever get it in the wrong way and have the holes on the wrong side.
I believe that.
This last one wouldn't print. Oh, for whatever reason.
No problem.
Sam, you need the last copy I've got?
You guys are all here.
So what's your pleasure here? Do you guys want to go line by line
Did we get the
item?
expenditures too? Or just the rest?
Have the line, have the,
Yeah. They have the account numbers on the expenditure.
But
page.
no headers.
And we can, Sam, we can work
I'd
on
have
putting,
to reprint that from the office.
yeah.
But do you
But
see,
between now and the next.
but do you
and
see
be-
how awkward that is with no
Yes.
headers?
Yes, I meant to
Yes.
print, my original first copy had headers, so.
I'd like to suggest, since we've gone through the whole presentation, and that would give us all time to go through the line item budget in some detail, as well as kind of absorb what we've had today, maybe when we come back next week and we can sit down and, if we need to ask Randy to have certain department heads here, or however y'all want to do that.
Yeah, let him know in advance.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the farmer's market thing. So what Michael is working on right now, just upfitting 2 of the sheds for open air, no sides on them. They'd have a concrete floor, they'd have electrical outlets, they'd have lights and a couple large fans to move airs on the hot day. And then option 2 then would be to do the same equip, but only put roll down doors on them, and the restroom, men's and women's restroom on one end of one of the 2 T sheds. And then he will have, he said he's got all the pricing for, the open air, and he was just waiting for overhead doors. This was yesterday when I talked to him.
What is it gonna do with the third building, the one with the,
Tear it down.
tear it down? Okay.
I think if you lean on it, Larry, it
Oh,
will find its way to the ground.
Okay. All right.
So he's going to present other options.
There'll be 2 options, one for 2 of the T sheds to be open air, and one if they're enclosed in. And here's the rent for that one, and here's the rent for this one.
Should we approach Nash County also and see if they help us out?
Yeah, I say we leave no stone
look at the
unturned.
street.
Contact,
Just let me know and we'll
I've
go meet.
already reached out to Z because again, Doris Sumner, Nash County Tax Department has told me, even though the town's renting the land under the proposal, the town's renting the land for the parking lot, grass area, and where a stage may be in the future, and leasing the land for the farmer's market, they're still going to be taxable. And Michael wants a triple net lease where, the town pays the taxes on it. So I've reached out to Nash County to see if they would reimburse the property taxes that the town would pay under that lease back to the town. The town is paying town tax on it, but it's coming right back. I don't know if you call that a cost or not. You give it out with this hand and you take this hand and you bring it back. But the county's taxes would definitely be something out of our pockets. If we could get that back, it would. All the other states that I've worked in, if a municipality leased property and it was for a public purpose, it was
There
not
was no
taxed.
tax.
Now, if we own that property, it wouldn't be taxed. But again, Michael doesn't want to go there because he's buying that property with his own cash and he wants to use it for equity to leverage other projects. There's the reason why he doesn't want to sell it, because he can get more use out of it, leasing it to us and using it to leverage other projects than he can if he just simply sells it and gets cash from us for the sale. But buying the farmer's market venue would significantly reduce that budget, as you can well imagine. at $1,700 a month, it's $22,000 a year in cost.
And we're not gonna make anywhere close to that.
No, you won't.
That's like throwing money down a deep hole.
It is.
But it's bringing an amenity, it's bringing something to town that we currently have, which is very trendy, very much in demand by younger people.
But we don't know that yet.
But that much is true, but we got a whole lot of other amenities in this
Right.
book here we got to look out for. So any project, being farmer's market or anything else, if we go forward on stuff where we don't know what the outcome is gonna be, I'm not willing to take that risk this year.
Well, that's why,
Not with
Larry,
what
if we
got.
could get a demonstration grant for 2 years to cover the cost,
Okay, yeah.
that would, I mean, it really puts the burden on us, and COI especially, to make that successful and make it well received, so that at the end of the year, at the end of the 2 years, if we get a grant and we cover the cost for 2 years, well, we can see benefit to it, and we can make the decision at that time to continue on at the town's
So if
expense.
it don't fly, we'll just lose money for 2 years.
If you have that grant,
And you tell that to people at the same time that you're telling them that their water and sewer bills are going up. And they look at you like, really? You know, the $1,700 a month for something that we have no idea that's going to fly.
Well, hopefully he's gonna come back with something significantly a lot cheaper than that, because he knows right off the bat we're not going for the 1,700.
But it gives you the option.
any other
Close them if
discussion?
they're opened.
Any other discussion? If not, do I hear a motion to
There
leave?
being no more business to take up today, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Sam, can we get those, when can we get the headers?
I've got that here.
You've already got it.
Well, this one, the budget summary.
Okay, that. I'm talking
Got that
about
today.
in the
The
back,
actual line item.
the line items in the back.
So I can give that to, I can get it to you. How do you want to get it? I mean, I can bring it
We'll
to you
print
next
'em.
time, or?
We'll print them and get them to you.
Why don't you do it, just have the clerk drop it off for us. Drop it off to us. Oh, that's it?
That's just the budget summary. It's
Yeah,
got the
so-
headers.
You can replace those pages in your 3-ring binder.
But don't replace the last page, because the last page is double-sided.